What is happening, everybody? Okay, so this video, I haven't done one of these in a while, and what I wanted to do is just basically, it's kind of an informative video, but I am doing it as a live chat. And the reason why I'm doing it as a live chat is I like interacting with you guys, so it kind of makes for a little bit more entertaining listen if you're listening to this later on down the line. But the big thing is this: what to do what to consider, I should say, when you are looking to modify your car. So I've got some notes here. Basically, what I'm going to try to do is walk you through some of the things to watch out for, some of the things to consider before you get started. So number one, and in rare fashion, I've got notes over here. What's up, T? What's kicking, man? First and foremost, you've already bought the car. This is assuming that you already own this car. You've had it for a while. You want to throw some modifications at it. You want to throw headers at it. You want to throw an intake, a cam, supercharger, nitrous, rocket motor, whatever it is that you want to put together. That's what you're looking to shoot for here. So you've already kind of done some research, but you need to really do your research. This is your opportunity to, well, basically know your car better than you ever have before. You need to get in and find out, number one, what does and doesn't necessarily fly with your combination, or at least with your platform. If you've picked a Challenger, you guys know how this works out. You've got guys that have been trying to throw superchargers and this and that and everything else, trying to do this stuff stock, and they end up scattering these things all over the place. You're gonna have a bad time if you don't do your research first. So what you've got to understand are the limitations of the platform that you're working with. And more to that point, you've got to learn how to be an expert on becoming expert at this topic. It's difficult to work with folks that are very malaise about what their car, what modifications they're gonna have. It's better to work with somebody who's done their research and has questions than somebody that just comes by and drops off their keys and then has unrealistic expectations on the back end. And that's another thing too, by the way. Know what the outcome is going to be before you drop your car off. The best advice I can give here is, if this is your first go around with modified cars, you need to understand that a cam swap and long tube headers is not going to make the thing feel like the goddamn space shuttle, okay? That's not how it works. The way that it typically works is you get some improvement along the way with the modern modified vehicle. But unless you're going with forced induction, you're not going to get a real hard kick in the pants. It's one of the reasons why cams for these Hemis, they're such a dicey subject, because when I put a cam together, I've got to take everything into account. Weight of the vehicle, the use of the vehicle, everything basically that's involved. I've got to put all that together in a package. So I'm getting a ton of notifications up here on stuff that has nothing to do with my live here. Anyway, let me say what's up to everybody. T, what's up, man? Michael, what's up? Alex, Alex is asking, can you explain in more detail why I think there's no such thing as a node springs required cam? Yeah, so let me stop right there. So you guys get the idea though first. I mean, do your research, understand what you're coming into, and further to that point, make sure you've got a vehicle that's fit to modify. That's the other side of this. But we'll get into that in a minute. Okay, so why I don't feel there's any such thing as a no spring required cam. First of all, if you've got, especially for these Hemis, this is what we're really concentrating on here. The valve events for an aftermarket cam to really work well are going to have to be very aggressive. The load profile is going to have to be very aggressive. You can get by with the stock springs. The problem is at higher RPM. You've got a large valve trying to be controlled by this spring. You've got a large valve, heavy lifters. You've got push rods, which in essence you really should be upgrading at this point, at least 080 or even 120 push rods. I would wholeheartedly suggest and suggest, I should say, that when you start adding that extra weight, especially with the added weight of the push rods, you're going to want to go with a better cam because the acceleration rate of that valve opening up is so much more quick. And to be honest, you're already there. I mean, seriously, we're going to quibble over $400 when you're already spending $4,000. Not a good place to start trying to save money in valve train components, number one. And number two, the valve train geometry in these cars isn't all that great to begin with. So when you start ramping these things up the way that you're going to ramp them up, and what I'm talking about is literally the load profile, you're going to want a cam that's going to work well with that. Now, those will argue that the stock load profile is already fairly aggressive and the cam is managing that on its own, along with the stock push rods and everything else. Yeah, kinda, I guess. But see, the idea here is you want to spin this thing to 64, 65, 6600 RPM. The best shift point for a stock cam, you're not going to be making power realistically past 61, 6200 RPM with these cars, or stock for that matter. So if you're going to kick up the RPM, that means you're increasing the load and you're increasing the likelihood of valve flow. Now, some will say, well, we've never seen that. We've never run into that problem. We've got no spring. They go for it. By all means, don't only listen to me. Listen to the people that are selling you the kit also. If they're saying they haven't had any problems and they're going full on, no spring required, fantastic. Sounds great. I personally wouldn't do it. I've seen cars hit valve float on the dyno, and that's a bit of a problem. And what's worse, see, here's the thing. What's worse about that is when or if the car hits valve float, you've already got an intake manifold that is trying to restrict the amount of RPM that you can run anyway. The last thing you want to add is any kind of valve train instability once you start really spinning the thing up. Because to be honest with you, what is the point of putting a cam in a car if you're only going to spin it to the stock-ish RPM? It's just, I mean, you might see some torque improvements down low, but realistically up top, based on the intake manifold and based on how you're going to want to set the cam up for the actual lobe events, I wouldn't want a cam that's no spring required because you're leaving power on the table. That's the other thing. So hopefully that answers the question. Richard's saying that he's really geared towards getting Cook's long tube headers. However, I feel his Scat Pack performance well stock. I would agree. So yeah, and Mark is saying people send their cars to shop with a couple of intakes thinking they're going to gain 5,000 wheel horsepower. So here's the thing. First off, here let's kind of back up a little bit. When it comes to taking your car to a shop, first of all, let me just say this to everybody out there that's looking to modify their vehicle. I would not modify my vehicle. I would not spend significant money or perform significant surgery on my car. And give me some room here, guys, because I might end up teeing off here because this is kind of a subject that pisses me a little bit. I would not go in and start performing major surgery on my car unless I can afford to basically replace the car, because that's what the cost is going to be if the thing scatters. Let me kind of elaborate on that. So if you're taking your car to the shop and you're getting headers and you're getting a tune, the car is basically stock other than that, maybe a cold air intake, something along those lines, maybe even an intake manifold, you're not really stretching the limits of the engine. You're not stretching the limits of anything really to do with that car. The minute you start taking cylinder heads off, start removing body panels, or you start dropping the cradle and you start installing camshafts, that's when you know you're going to have a problem. And let me tell you something else. If you can't afford to, in essence, replace that engine in this example, you don't need to be doing those mods to your car. And listen, I practice what I preach. With my white SRT, I popped a transmission. It was my fault. I'd actually accidentally bumped the shifter on the launch. basically fragged the trans. I didn't cry about it. I didn't bitch about it. I just knew that, damn, race car stuff, had to buy a new transmission. Shit happens. Just so happens it happened to me. So it's a little bit scarier though when it's an engine. When you are starting to throw blowers at it, stroker shit, when you're starting to throw even camshafts for that matter, because you're going to be running the car even that much harder. And this also goes back to the question about those valve springs. It's not like you bought that camshaft or that supercharger or both, or that nitrous. It's not like you bought that stuff for show. You're actually out there running the hell out of your car. More so than you would be maybe when it's stock. Do yourself the favor, buy the premium parts, but understand this, it's a machine. There's a chance that shit can go wrong even when it's stock, much less when it's modified. And you go, well, how often does that happen? Happens to happen a goddamn lot. As a matter of fact, it's funny. When you work at a shop, you tend to only see the things that go wrong. You tend to only see the things that happen that never happen, basically. People say, LSs, they're bomb-proof. Those things never fail. Happen to see them fail on the dyno. Oiling issues. This, again, LS. Could be an oiling issue. Could be just a bad bearing. Could be just a manufacturer defect in a rod that doesn't have any problem living out life in a stock form. Start throwing cam at it, start throwing some serious RPM at it, say 68, 6900 RPM, rod snaps, boom, engine blows up. Perfectly good LS3, gone. But it was a perfectly good LS3 before it was brought in. It would have stayed perfectly good if the car would have never been modified, but it's a defective part. Hemis fail on the dyno. Hemis fail driving down the road. Hemis have failed, seen a 6.4 lifter literally fail sitting in the parking lot idling. The fuck is that? Freaking Mopars, man. Anyway, you get the idea. These things fail no matter what. There's a reason why cars have warranties. If you are squeamish and if you can't afford to replace everything that mechanic is going to touch, then don't modify the car. If you're squeamish about warranties, don't modify your car. If your car fails and you can't get to work, don't modify your car. Go out and buy a cheap pickup truck to drive back and forth to work. And I mean, there's cash cars out there all over the place. Get you a Nissan pickup truck. Ride that sucker back and forth to work, man. You'll love that thing. You'll probably end up falling in love with that truck and ditching your hot rod just because Betsy takes care of you. But no, seriously, when you're looking at the prospect of really diving down into your engine and going through the amount of work that you're going to do, or, well, you're going to be paying for, you don't want to make the mistake of going cheap on any level with that. So, getting back to it, to the person modifying your car, check your goals, understand exactly what can and what cannot be done to that car. Know that you are not going to build a race car out of any one of these modern cars. It doesn't work like that. That's the other thing I wanted to talk about. When I'm talking about the limitations of each individual platform, and it doesn't matter what it is. It could be anything American, it could be any of the imports, it doesn't matter. They all have their strengths and they all have their weaknesses. But there are limits to what you can get away with. Do your research and know what those limits are. When you take your car to the shop, listen to what that mechanic says. And this is assuming you've done your research and assuming that you've done your research enough to know that the shop that you've taken your car to is speaking your platform fluently. Once you've made it to that point, listen to what they have to say and take their advice. Don't think that these guys are necessarily out to screw you. It's not really like that. What happens is a lot of these guys, they see the reputable shops. They see all the problems all the time. Like I was saying before, you see the things that never happen, the things that never, okay, so when you work at a shop, I know I'm kind of bouncing around here a little bit. When you work at a shop, let me tell you how this breaks down. The things that never happen, the things they say, oh, that will never happen, that engine's bomb-proof, Just pick something. Happens about once a month. The things that rarely happen. People say, yeah, you might want to watch out for this, but it hardly ever happens. But it's just kind of that happens about once a week when you work at the shop. And you kind of see how that progresses. In other words, the guys typically only see the failures, the big failures, as a matter of fact, and they only see the stuff that, well, in essence, never happens. So when you get those guys into a room, believe me, the last thing they want to do is have a callback on a customer's car. They're going to tell you, you need to do this, this, and this. Don't do anything else. Don't waste your money here. We've already tried that. That makes cars explode. Don't do it. And listen to that advice. If you go to a shop and you get conflicting advice, err on the side of caution here, because unfortunately, there are some nefarious shops out there, and they will literally do whatever you tell them to do because you're the customer. They're the business, and they're in business to make money, which is great. The problem is that I've seen this. I can't mention, I'm not going to get into mentioning specifics, but there's a car that I see fairly regularly at the drag strip, and it is a poster child for what not to do to a Hemi. And if I even start to describe this thing, I'm going to give it away. And it's kind of like, I don't want to front anybody out, but I honestly think the car is faster, or would have been faster stock, and it's got a lot of stuff done to it. Err on the side of caution, and especially with the Hemis, err on the side of less is more. Take a minimalist approach, and that'll at least get you rolling. One of the things I wanted to say too is that shops, the reputable shops, and this goes along the same lines as, find the shop that speaks fluent. Make sure you're talking to a lot of folks that have used the shop. Two things. One, every shop has some kind of problem customer. Everybody's got shit just doesn't work out with this person or that person. I'm convinced that there are haunted cars. We've had cars show up at the shop that shit would fail on them for absolutely no apparent reason, and I mean like dumb shit would fail, like wiring harness, bad connection on a pin, things that never ever happen. Shop's got to put up with that and try to source those problems. So anyway, getting back to it, I shit you not, there are haunted cars. There are, in a reputable shop will see the bad, shitty work and the dishonest work that comes from other shops that basically have screwed over and fucked their customers. If you find yourself in that position, I kind of feel bad for you, because you will have spent a shitload of money and probably won't get any kind of a refund. The only advice I can give you there is hopefully it doesn't happen again, and hopefully your car is not haunted, because I swear to you, shit you not, we've had cars, I've seen this in person. Car shows up, every problem you could possibly have is wrong with this thing. Again, I don't want to get too specific, but we've had cars show up that we should have punted them out the door. No good deed goes unpunished in this business. And just like what you would expect, that project starts going downhill quick. That's when you got yourself a poltergeist. Anyway, that shit does happen. I'm just kind of giving you some story right now, because I want to talk about, well, the other side of this. Check your bank account. If you're planning on getting your car worked on and you're taking your car to a reputable shop, you've done all your research, you've got your goals, your car hasn't ever been touched by anybody else, your baby is only going to be touched by the cream of the crop. Fantastic. Check your bank. Know what it's going to actually cost at the end of the day, and know that it's probably going to be more expensive than you're going to like. Going cheap is the most expensive mistake I've seen anybody make in this business. That's why whenever I would put together combinations, it was a recipe, it was a formula, and if anybody wanted to stray outside of that formula, I would advise heavily against it. Sometimes I got overruled, to the peril of those that overruled me. And that's just the way that it is. I have really, to be honest, no sympathy for anybody that goes cheap on their build. So trying to get by going a certain route is basically you're trading dollars at that point. You are at some point going to have a failure when you start trying to go too cheap. Buying quality parts from manufacturers that stand behind their products will pay dividends down the road. And I mean that sincerely. Let me give you an example. Well, the example I'm going to give is in the form of a question. What would you rather buy? Let's say you're in the market for a Challenger and you've decided that you'd like to buy one with some modifications. What are you more likely to buy? Somebody that's, you can look under the hood and see quality bit of kit. You know, it's got a set of Cook's long tubes. You've got a build sheet. You've got receipts. You've got everything else that this guy had paid all this money for these the work that he's done to that car. Would you rather buy that, or would you rather pop the hood and see some chicken shit cheap cold air kit? It looks like it was cobbled out of like Pep Boys leftover garbage bin parts. Some cheap looking long tubes, the whole bit. That tells you more about the person than it does about the car, is the point that I'm making. So just know that coming into it. Not only does it pay dividends in terms of reliability, quality, pride, craftsmanship, have some pride in your ride at least, right? But at some point, let's say you're going to sell it, and about 95% of the people do end up selling their cars and moving on to another project or another platform. You can get a pretty penny when you spend it on the front end. And yeah, it's going to be more painful, but I mean, damn, what's more painful or what's more embarrassing? And listen, every time you get behind the wheel of that car, you're going to know you went cheap. And that's the other thing. Yeah, there is some pride involved with this, but the reality is isn't that the business that you're in? If you're going into this modification business, you've already got built-in pride and expectations with your car. Why wouldn't you want to go with the better quality parts? Drives me nuts. The other thing is the shop that you take your car to. If some shop is offering you some deal that sounds way too good to be true, what is it? It's too fucking good to be true. And that's the other side of it. Listen, the shop's got to make money, and if the shop's got to make money, it's making money not only to stay in business, but to also stand behind the work that they do. If somebody gives you some smoking deal on some whatever widget that you're going to have installed, or cam or blower or whatever, who's going to stand behind that work when it fails? Question mark of the day, right? Because what shops do stand behind the work that they put out into the world? Very few, as a matter of fact. You'd be shocked. And in fact, there are limits, but in the case of, y'all know I used to work for Pike, still kind of am affiliated with the shop a little bit, but I've seen Alex bend over backwards, turn himself into a pretzel, and cause himself a lot of stress and a lot of expense at times where he didn't have to. In times where I certainly wouldn't have. So again, that some of that has to do with you shouldn't have taken that car to begin with. But this is the type of stuff that happens, and it's at the times when things do go bad that you've got to be able to rely on the shop that you're spending all this money. You've got to rely on them to hopefully stand behind what they've installed. Again, this also falls in line with some of the shit that would show up at the shop. And my question was, why is this thing here? Why is this car here? Take it back to whoever fucked this up. Did you get a refund? No. Okay, well, what am I supposed to do with this thing? I got to now go back and instead of doing a normal install, I got to unfuck this goddamn thing and then fix it. Hopefully it doesn't fly apart. And by the way, you've been beating on this thing since you brought it in. Little wonder the damn thing flew apart. Everything else was wrong with it. I can't take any responsibility for this thing. I wouldn't want to even work on it. Those are the types of problems that the shop has, and those are the realities that you're going to be walking in some cases if you do find yourself in that position. Again, do your research, talk to people, figure out who's going to stand behind their work, because if they don't expect the shop that you take it to bail you out of their problems. That's kind of a dirty little secret that seems to kind of fly around a little bit. With people will take their car to some, Craigslist special guy on the internet that doesn't have a reputation, or at least could be a bit nefarious to begin with. Happens to happen with tuning, with guys lifting tunes and things like that. Anyway, I won't get into that. Fucking assholes. Anyway, so when things don't go right, when things basically turn to shit, just know that it's not just the thing that broke that went to shit, it's everything else that is associated with that thing. We're talking rotating assembly. We're talking, did you over rev it? Did you float a valve because you have too much cam? And oh yeah, those stock springs are fine. Go ahead, man. Let her rip. Send it. So you just on that topic, by the way, there's nothing worse than bent pusher rods. It's like a little bit of a tattletale, and it happens to happen when you don't have enough spring pressure. Anyway, just some things that I've seen. Just saying. Again, answering that question about valve springs and is there any such thing as an NSR cam? No. Anyway, again, tonight, a bit of a rant, and I know I'm bouncing around a lot, maybe a little bit more than normal. But the thing is I keep seeing guys post up little bitchy problems about, well, I took my car to, this shop and, did great work, but then it blew up. Okay, well, let's look at the details. Did you take it to a credible shop? No. Oh, okay. Did you take it from a shitty situation to a credible shop? They tried to do something with it and it broke. Okay. Well, make sure, again, see rule number 7 or whatever it was. If you cannot afford to replace everything that mechanic touches, don't modify your car. And I'll keep saying that all night long. I'll put that shit on loop. Make a drinking game out of it. If you're too broke to fix it when it's broke, don't modify it. If it's your daily driver, don't modify it past just normal bolt-ons, things to make it sound good, whatever. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you've blown up your only means of transportation. Get you a cash car and then go apeshit crazy on whatever it is that you want to do with your hot rod, just knowing that you can at least still get back and forth to work. Seen that happen a few times, by the way. I've seen that happen in situations where the vehicle failed and you would never have imagined the vehicle could possibly fail. Try to talk the folks out of it. They won't have it. At some point, as a shop, you got to make money, because if you keep talking people out of making dumb mistakes, in some cases, you won't have any business to go back to, or to fall back on. So there's that, for example. But the other thing is this, talking about modifying your cars. One thing that I cannot stress enough, we've talked about, okay, the stuff that the shop sees, but let's kind of dial this back to the guy that's doing this for the first time. Please understand that if you bring a car to a shop that is in shitty condition, there's a chance, and I've done this personally, there's a chance you're going to get punted. Take a hike, not going to touch your shit. Don't get offended if that happens. Know what you are driving around in. Look, I've had situations show up where the car basically sounded like it had been pulled out of a freaking lake. Chargers that had one of them had a rod knock, and the guy wanted to put a blower on it. This shit happens. This is stuff that you cannot make up. But the problem is that these are people that are uneducated. They have absolutely no idea what direction that they really need to be going with this project. They pick something up for cheap, and they think, oh, I can just buy this for cheap. I can do that, and I'm gonna make all the horsepowers, and I'm gonna do this, and it's gonna be the shit. No, it's going to be shit. That's all it's gonna be. And the biggest issue is that when you tell these folks that, it's like they're hearing it for the first time. That the tooth fairy ain't real, that Santa Claus ain't real. It's like they're discovering all of this right before your very eyes. And they go, well, what do you mean? You can't fix that? Let me go back to rule number 6. Number 1, I should say. Check your wallet. Make sure you got the funds to fix it. Check your wallet. Make sure you got the funds to freaking pay and replace everything that mechanic is going to touch. Again, this is another sticky situation. If you show up and you're worried about money, you're already in the wrong business. If you want to try to play let's make a deal with modifications on your car, I will just, and again, we're assuming that you've done your due diligence, which at this stage is questionable if you start getting somebody that's doing this shit. But if you find somebody that is willing to work with you a little bit on price or things like that, that's great, fantastic. But it's your responsibility to figure out your finances, not the shop. Because the shop has this little tool that they have when people can't pay their bills. It's called a mechanic's lien. It trumps every other lien or claim on that vehicle. In essence, you are giving away the rights to your vehicle if you can't pay to have it fixed. Then goes to auction, mechanic makes his money back, you're left without a car. So again, and you still have the debt to pay back if you, had it financed. Things to consider. And these are, guys, I'm just bringing up stuff that I've seen. Okay? I'm not trying to just pull shit out of the air. For me, this is me as a shark in a school of mackerel of problems. Like there's so many, you guys heard me talk about, it doesn't matter where you start with a shower curtain, just start hanging it, you'll be fine. This is the same kind of conversation. It's so difficult to stay focused on one thing because everything is all interwoven, intermingled. It's like this ball of rubber bands. But the big one is money. Nobody likes to talk about money. The funny thing is, you need to know about what it's going to cost. You need to shop around. You need to understand where you're at, the whole grand scheme of things, as far as being able to pay for this thing in terms of budget. Because guys, man, I've seen it happen. I've seen guys get, just tits deep into a build, and they keep going, oh, well, and the funny thing is that the phone call goes like this. Hey, man, what if we did this? Well, man, it's going to cost you another $3,000. All right, yeah, let's do that. Okay, I need $1,500 for parts. Okay, here's my credit card. Start putting this thing together and call the person for, typically we'd put them on a plan at that point because you need to manage cash flow. You don't want to have all this money hanging out there. You got to manage your labor cash flow. And it starts to happen where the guy's like, okay, well, I'll pay you on Friday when I get paid. Okay, cool, no problem. We already know it. Don't tell us you're going to pay us on Friday when you get paid. Don't do it. Pay when the agreement is due. Pay when that payment agreement is due. Want to hear about got to wait on Friday. I didn't wait for you. Okay, so let me just make sure that next time we work on the car, the next time the car comes up for flag, my mechanic will start working on it when he gets paid. In advance, in this case. But you can see where the business model starts to erode pretty quickly. And I guess that's really the point of it. Don't make life difficult on your tech. Don't make life difficult on the shop. Pay and understand where that payment is coming from. Because that type of a relationship, that open and honest relationship with the shop, is going to get you a lot more on the back end. Shops, by the way, another star here. You might want to start taking notes if you haven't already. But shops are a lot more inclined to throw in those little extras, to go that extra mile, to have that extra hour or two on your car that you're not paying for. They want to throw in that extra mile thing when they're getting paid regular and when they don't have to deal with bullshit. Not to say all of them will, but a lot of them do. And they value that, and they value you as a customer, and they want that kind of referral, because if you're like that and you have that type of a personality, then maybe your friends do too. Maybe your family does. You want to seriously take care of the people that are taking care of you, because those referrals are what keep you in business. The last thing you want to do as a shop owner is try to help somebody that can't pay their bills and keep stringing you along and saying, oh, well, what about this? What about that? Well, let me get such and such involved with this kind of relative, helping them out with paying. Hell no. You get the base, bottom, absolute, whatever will get that thing out the door, because at that point, I will have already lost 2, 3, 4, 8 weeks on that car. Again, happens to happen a lot. And it sucks too, because you never really know where that relationship is going to take you. Sometimes it goes great, other times it goes to shit. And not every project goes according to plan. That's the other thing. If you're told that it's going to take 2 weeks for your car to get done when you drop your car off, unless the parts are already there, all right, unless you can physically walk out and give your parts a hug, all of them, not the big ones, not just the little ones, all of them need to be there. Unless you can do that, double or even triple the amount of time that you're told. Make sure that all of your parts are on site before you bring your car into that shop for the work. Or if you're providing your own parts, number one, make sure the shop is cool with that. Make sure it fits within the formula that we talked about earlier. That's a big part of it. But number two, if you're providing all your own parts, make sure you have all of your own parts and that you've done your research and you know everything that you need to have in the trunk of that car when you drop it off. Let's say you're working with HHP. Call up Josh. Josh walks you through whatever kit that you're going to get. He sends you everything in one shipment. You get everything in one shipment, put it in the car. If there's anything short shipped, you don't take your car to the shop until that one widget shows up. Then you can take it to the shop, and then hopefully you'll have a pretty decent and somewhat accurate ETA from, within a couple of days of getting your car back. That's another thing that happens to happen a lot here too, because if you've ever worked with manufacturers in this side of the industry, you'll find out pretty quickly that you are not dealing with the best and the brightest, and that's fine. And it's really more to do with attitude than anything else. But I will say this: I only have one supplier that I had a fail-safe, faultless track record with, and that was HHP, High Horse Performance. Them and Stankey, but Stankey's kind of you can't really count Stankey because you're just talking about, collars and tie bars. But anyway, as far as like a multiple parts vendor, HHP would be probably top on that list. Second would be Cook's headers. Those could kind of ride seat to seat. Aside from that, problems all over the place. And we're talking place an order, the wrong shit shows up. Just the wrong shit. We're talking call them up. Here's the problem, here's the product, the wrong shit shows up. I've had it to where the wrong shit showed up 3 times in a row. You start to wonder, is the person that I'm dealing with asleep, high, drunk, dumb, doesn't give a fuck? I can respect doesn't give a fuck, just tell me. High a little bit too, you know what I'm saying. Look, the fact of the matter is, you're going to have to account for that amount of time as well. The point of all of this is, your mechanic is going to give you, or the shop, or the guy sitting behind the desk is going to give you an approximation, and know that that is an approximation. Here's the other thing too. When we're talking about, and this is kind of a sticky subject, we're talking about your estimates. It is an estimate. All right, the mechanic starts getting into your car and finds a bunch of God only knows what going on with that thing, your price is going to go up. They should stop what they're doing and give you a call and let you know, number 1, what they found, number 2, what the remedy will be, number 3, what the cost of that remedy will be, and what kind of timeline that adds to your project. This is the type of stuff that happens, and this is one of those things that happens to happen a lot. And it's not just the shop trying to throw line items on a ticket. There can be things that you're just not looking at that have nothing to do with the build that you're working on that you end up finding later on. Could be a cracked rotor, could be, can be expensive. It could be, man, these belts just look like they need to be replaced. Probably a good idea. What's the mileage? Yeah. Go ahead and shoot that over as an option. It could be minor things like that. But these minor things can really start to add up. I mean, we're talking about minor suggested add-ons that the car may or may not really need, end up costing you another $200, $300, $400. Or in a worst case scenario, like rotors or, God only knows what else. Anyway, you're talking thousands of dollars, and it can hold up the project. So it's okay to say no, by the way, when things like that come up, with the understanding of complete the work that I'm paying you to do on the estimate. Let's circle back around and let's take a look at those other parts and let's see if they really do need to be replaced. It's good advice, but it still may cost you. And what I mean by that is, in a lot of cases, guys can only afford to do what they're going to do to the car. And they're stretching themselves out a little bit thin to do so. So getting back to the money aspect of this, when it comes to payment, you want to use PayPal or a credit card, something where you've got some level of recourse. Don't walk in there with a fistful of cash, throw it down, and just not have any real recourse. But do yourself a favor. Don't stretch yourself thin. A lot of guys think, well, if I'm paying cash, I'll get some kind of a better deal. In some cases you will. But the reality is that you will have no recourse at that point. If you run into a problem, how are you going to claim it? And so there's that. But I guess what I'm saying is if you're putting this stuff on a credit card, it's make sure that you have the cash in the bank. This is my point. Make sure that you have the cash in the bank to pay off that credit card once it hits. Please, unless you're going and you've got a personal loan and your interest rate is low, please do yourself a favor and don't modify your car through the power of the plastic. It's a bad idea. I've seen guys get deep into debt over this kind of stuff because it's just money, right? the money isn't real when it's just this piece of plastic, and guys can get a little bit carried away. Their eyes get really big, and I can have 1,000 horsepower. Here's my credit card. Problem is they don't have the cash to back it up. Make sure that any purchase that you put together when it comes to modifying your car, you've got bank to cover your credit card. And that is the absolute best advice I can give just walking into this conversation. Because you know how it is in racing. I mean, if you want to make a small fortune in racing, start off with a large fortune. All of this advice I'm giving you guys to try to save y'all some money. I'm trying to save you from some of the issues that I've seen, some of the pitfalls, some of the mentality that I've seen that has turned projects toxic, and some of the areas where it's a whole lot easier to have a good attitude, because a good outcome will get you, a good attitude will get you a good outcome a lot of times a lot better than the alternative. And also that also goes in line with another bit of advice, and you can kind of see where I'm going to go with this. Look, bad things happen with builds all the time. Things can get a little bit weird, things get a little bit sideways with builds. Happens to happen a lot. It sucks when it does, but just know that nobody does anything typically. If again, reputable shops, and I'll just leave it there. But in this business, again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and the good intentions on the part of the shop aren't always going to ensure the best outcome. If you don't, and this goes back to rule number whatever it was, make sure that you are educated on the procedures and the processes and what it is that you're buying. And the reason why I say that is, if something does go a little bit sideways with your build, you need to be able to tell that shop, no, stick to the original plan, know that it's going to cost you time, know that it might even cost you some money, but stick with the original plan. Don't start allowing minor issues create major problems with your build down the line. Minor issues with, well, I can't get this particular camshaft, but I can get this other one. No, stick with the original camshaft that you wanted to get. For another $800, we can port your heads, or, for another, no, stick with the original plan, stick with the original budget. That's really more to the point that I'm trying to make there. Kind of got a little bit shady. But anyway, let me check in with you guys real quick. Destroyer Scat saying Racer X is on now. Yeah, that's one of the things that I got. It popped up on my end. Speed Freak 93 saying, get eating Professor Mason to keep my 2016 Hellcat or upgrade to a wide body. What would be the gain, or what would the gain be as for the driving experience? Really isn't one, man. I hate to break it to you. Like I said, I got, I've driven all of them. So I will say this though, the wide body has a little bit better turn-in response. Again, it's just a function of having the larger tires. The look of it is, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I think they look great, but again, you're just not going to have that major of a driving experience difference between the two. Not in my experience anyway. But HU37 is saying, if I had to mod my car all over again, I would have started with a budget and a plan. Modding costed me much more than I thought, and some mods didn't work as well as I thought. Story of my life, story of an existence that can only be described as frustrating. But yeah, got to have a plan, got to have a budget. Number one. Number two. Number three, do your research. Read up on everything that you possibly can. Educate yourself to a level where you are comfortable speaking on the topic with your mechanic. The mechanic would much rather have a conversation with somebody that knows what they're talking about and knows what they're doing than have to try to explain it. Because look, mechs are not good at explaining things. It's not what they do. A mechanic is there to do mechanic shit. not to educate you on what all is going to be involved with your car. You've got to educate yourself on this. Now, granted, Pikes try to educate everybody, maybe a little bit too much, just because of the time that it can take, but the outcome is typically better for the effort. I'll put it to you that way. Alex is saying, all that makes sense. What's the safe and useful RPM limit when doing a new cam and new springs with 080 push rods? At what point are the Stanky tie bars and collars recommended? I recommend Stanky tie bars and collars for anybody that's going to be spinning their car over 6,400 RPM on a regular basis. 6,500 RPM is certainly where I would really start considering them mandatory. Safe RPM limit without the stand keys, I've seen them hold together up to 66, 67 without any major issues-ish. But that's not always the case, and we've seen bent push rods and weird-looking wear patterns on valve stems from guys that were really beating on their cars. So, again, I suggest Stanky tie bars and collars with every cam swap because, again, shift points are going to be 64, 65. You're going to be running that car like crazy all the time. Every little bit helps, and it's cheap insurance. And this thing's only cost like $350, and you're going to have the thing apart anyway. So why wouldn't you? I mean, and they're easy to install. They're actually kind of fun to install. You get to use a 5 thousandths feeler gauge, and it's anyway. You get the point. They're an easy install. Shop may not even charge you labor to install them. Well, maybe a little bit, like half an hour. But the reality is that because everything's going to already be blown apart. Again, I would rather overbuild it and have it live forever than underbuild it and worry about it living forever. Let's see. CJ's checking it. Hey, B, what's up? Hey, what's up, man? Let's see. T's asking, hey, B, speaking of cams, did you have anything to do with at 448 SV Scats 448 cubic inch 7.3 stroke Scat Pack Challenger? Nope. He's down there in Houston and has the best sounding NA Gen 3 I've ever heard. No, I didn't have anything to do with that one at all, unfortunately. But I can tell you what I would have ground for it. CJ Colvin saying, what LS engine do you plan on swapping into your 72 GMC C25? I'm planning on doing a 5.3 swap. The reason why I'm planning on doing a 5.3 is because it's the least expensive, the most prevalent, and I can do a lot with a 5.3. And especially a lot to do with the money. And for me, that's really what it's more about. I think I'm going to go a little bit different route, though, just in terms of timeline. I'm going to stretch the timeline out a little bit, throw a different exhaust on the 400. Going to go with a set of mid-length, which really the mid-length for these trucks are long tubes. But I'm going to go mid-length headers for the 400, trying to solve the riddle of the vapor lock issue. But go RPM air gap and just a generic 650, 750 CFM 4-barrel. It doesn't matter what it is. Anything will be an upgrade from this Rochester, although the 2-barrel works just fine. But getting it to the point where it's going to be easier on just the livability with the truck, that's really what I'm more concerned with. So, but yeah, 5.3 4L60 combo. Your generic, $1,700 crate out of the junkyard setup. And really, to be honest with you, it'll be a lot more fun like that. Mainly just because not only is it more convenient, but it'll be more fun because I can just do stuff to it because it's an LS. You'd be surprised. This is the funny thing. You would think that small block Chevy stuff, you would think you just trip over it walking to the mailbox, right? But oddly enough, it's not like that. It's harder to get your hands on parts, and it's harder to really get good, solid information than you would think. And that also applies to this truck. Again, you would think that parts for this thing would just be, growing on trees. but again, they're not, and or at least getting the quality stuff makes it difficult. There's some real hard things you would think would be really hard to get that aren't, and then there's some stuff that you would think would be ultimately the easiest thing in the world to get your hands on, but you can't get your freaking hands on. So part of that has to do with the quality exhaust system. But I've already found one, and we'll make it work for the short term. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. Time out. Ooh, hang on. My high heavy's in. Thank you very much. Say, could you explain what all goes into a proper trans tune? Thank you very much for the super chat. Well, there's a lot that goes into a proper trans tune, but I can walk you through the basics. So, first things first, if possible, and this is a best case scenario. Number one, we're gonna make sure that the shift points are all where they need to be. The best way to do this is on a prepared track with a drag pack setup, wheel and tire setup, so that it dead hooks and you can actually dial in the 1-2 shift and the 2-3 shift without getting any wheel spin. So firstly, I'm going to want to take a look at line pressure, probably bump up line pressure by about 10% typically. The next thing I'm going to take a look at is going to be the actual shift scheduling. And again, that's going to have to do with the wide open shift scheduling, but also under partial throttle. That is the toughest part to tune on a transmission. The rest of it, the fill rates, there's some stuff you don't even have to really worry about. Again, the line pressure, kicking that up a little bit. Obviously, your rev limits, you want to take a look at those and maybe bring those up a little bit. Factory rev limit's actually pretty high with the HP70 and the HP80, or I'm sorry, HP90. They flow, it's somewhere around like 7980 or 7480. I forget the number off the top of my head. I typically bump that up, or I don't have to bump that up, but also in the trans tune, there's some things that are going to be tied together with the engine tune. Number one, it's going to be engine RPM limits. So in conjunction with the trans tune, you also need to bump up your RPM limit for the engine. Typically, I'll bump that up to like 6,800 RPM to keep it from potentially going into a predictive shift issue where it'll cut throttle because it thinks it's going to hit a rev limiter. So again, just kind of walking you through some of the things you got to do. Shower curtains here. So rev limits, bump up line pressure just a little bit, but get your shift scheduling sorted wide open. That's easy to do. What I'll typically do is I'll go in and say, well, it just depends on how the cars react. The other thing is you've got to have a lot of data logs. I know I'm kind of bumping around a little bit on this, but you need to have proper data logs on the car. And you need to have a lot of, if possible, a lot of wide open shift points in cool air. I know this is going to sound kind of weird, but the acceleration rate, because it's going to be greater, especially in 1-2 and 2-3, if you're on a drag strip, you want to be able to try to tune it, if at all possible, in the best possible conditions, because that's the condition that's going to freak out your predictive algorithm the most, as far as if it's going to hit rev limits and stuff like that. This is really if you're talking about modified Hellcats and things like that. But, man, I'm really bouncing around a lot tonight. But anyway, let's go back to it. So partial throttle. Here's the other thing. So when you're messing around with your partial throttle shift points, just remember that lowering your downshift, so on HP tuners, you've got your left and your right from your point of view. Your right side is going to be your downshift protocol. Your left side is going to be your upshift protocol. I'll typically go in and lower the downshift protocol by, in gears, shift points 1-2, 2-3, 3-4, 4-5, 5-6, 6-7. I may lower that by, say, 2%. And then 7-8, I'll lower that number by, say, 3.5%. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to lower the speed at which you can get that downshift. And that's the important part of it. is just making that car downshift a little bit earlier underfoot. It'll make it seem a bit more lively. Now, conversely, on the upshift side, depends on the customer, depends on what you're looking for. This is where stuff gets completely subjective. But that being said, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, I'll bump up those partial throttle shift points to say, maybe I'll bump it up maybe 3%. And then for subsequent shift points, I may bump those up 2.5%, maybe 3.5%. And then a little bit further on, I may bump those up to maybe like 7 to 8. I might bump that up to 3.5 to 4%. Again, just to help carry that gear out a little bit. It makes the car feel a little bit better. But again, it's completely subjective. And a lot of guys will play with it a little bit, especially if you have access to it. And once you learn the shift scheduling and how to manipulate that. Oh, by the way, you've got to do that to 25 different tables, I suggest. To do that to every single table. Don't just do one, copy, paste, and then blanket everything. I like to, have it still go through the different modes and still act like an OEM tune. Just modified. I don't like to do the whole, take one shift pattern, make it real aggressive, and throw it at every single at every single cell that you have to deal with, or not cell, every single parameter that you have to deal with, because it makes the car a little bit harsh to drive. So those are the things those are kind of some of the thought processes that go into it. Again, there's a lot more to it than just that, but realistically, if you're tuning your own car, that's really all you got to do. And I'll be honest with you, it's all I did with this thing sitting behind me. So not a whole lot in the trans tune, because really the Mopars are already pretty good. I mean, there are some things, you can do the fill timing, the shift timing, you can bring that down a little bit. Torque management is the other one on the engine side. I would suggest this, by the way, we're talking about torque management on transmission tuning. Leave it in place. I wouldn't numb it too much. I have done drag testing with this. I have taken my white car and I went full torque management removal. Then I went partial external only torque management. Then I went internal only torque management. I mean, I basically went through every possible scenario. Let me tell you what I found. When I went, and this is all on the same night, by the way, when I went back and looked at the data logs, and in accordance with the time slips, the fastest pass was with all the torque management turned off, which is a bad idea because it's harder on your transmission. But it was only by like 0.02 of a second. The rest of the passes were all kind of in the same range, and it was safer and easier for the transmission. So I hate to tell you this, but you're just not going to get a whole lot by removing all that torque management. And that can actually save your transmission. Back in the day, it used to be that, especially the Diablo tunes, would kill all of the torque management. And you started seeing, especially in the trucks, you would see transmission failures, where the transmission would actually just start slipping. I think it was the 2-3 shift. Anyway, just kind of something to consider there on that trans tune. Hopefully that helps you out, though. That'll give you an idea for shift scheduling, line pressure, full throttle and partial throttle. But again, my absolute best advice, please get that thing on a sticky tire to tune everything out right through the transmission. That's the only real way that you can do that. If you can't do that, just know this: your stock shift point is going to be around 6,200 RPM. Factor in a couple of percent, 2 to 3%, to get it to shift at that 6,300-ish RPM, and you'll probably be in good shape across the board. So hopefully that helps. Haha, Kay saying, Master Mason, here is my life savings. Please enjoy. Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Rift is checking in with the super chat saying, okay, that's your whole life saving. Here's mine. That's awesome. C10 Mob, I like it. $9.99, man. I appreciate that a ton. Really do. Yeah, I'm looking forward to bringing you guys some of that content with the C25, Little Miss Sierra. In fact, my wife and I are putting around on that thing tonight, as a matter of fact. The leaf springs are in. The shackles are in. I am hoping that my cab mounts will show up, and that, what else am I waiting on? No, I'm waiting on some other shit. Oh, just some stuff from LMC, basically just some of the knickknacks that I couldn't get when I was getting my leaf springs. So let's bring you guys up to speed on the truck. Well, I think we've talked enough about, things to look forward to, things to watch out. So here's the thing with the truck, with the mod in your car. Here's the funny thing with the truck. The truck looks like it may have slid into a curb at some point, because one of the leaf springs had to be replaced. Kind of typical, I get that. The problem is they tried to do it on the cheap. And just like with any 50-year-old, very aggressive budget, let's just put it that way. And it's got 2 different leaf springs in it, which means that the tires in the back are like this, just a little bit. The funny thing is, it doesn't really crab walk as much as it just kind of tracks a little bit off. The funny thing is this truck, even with the funky track, has the best alignment out of any vehicle in the fleet. I'm even including this rollback behind me, but she trough wanders because of that low profile. The C25, you let your hands go and you could practically start reading a book before you had to, you get 3 or 4 pages into this thing before you might even have to make a change. It's pretty funny, actually. But anyway, so the leaf springs are in, that's going to get knocked out. The trans is going to get fixed, rebuilt, whatever, because it's basically shot. Can't give it anything more than about a quarter throttle and it'll start cooking through the clutches. That's kind of great. But it does burble around just fine, and so there's that. Let's see. Ordered a new float for the sending unit, because when I pulled the sending unit out, a brand new sending unit apparently, or was a very new sending unit, the float, these are copper floats, the float's cracked. So anyway, which means that the gas gauge would only read empty because it fills full of gas, but only after a while. It works for a while, and then it drops down. And anyway, you get the idea. So there's that to consider. Anyway, I got a new float. It's a kind of a hybrid. It's a copper tail end with a foam insert so that it just can't leak. So that'll get fixed. Let's see, what else is going on? Anyway, the headers, again, that's going to be the next step, along with intake manifold, carburetor. Keep the 400 for a while, keep the 430 gears, get the thing running good, get it pointed straight in the right direction with all the right parts. And then it's going to probably stay like that for a while. I need to get some body work done on it because I ain't no body guy. So rockers and cab supports. Cab supports are completely gone, by the way, but 3/4 ton, 50-year-old truck, or 40-year-old, 50-year-old, whatever it is. What do you expect? But everything's still real solid on the interior. So I'm looking forward to that. Fix the HVAC controls. All that's coming. So I don't know. I'm just having fun with this thing right now. I'll put it to you like this. It is already fulfilling its job. That C25 puts a freaking smile on my face every time I drive it. Now, when it goes into vapor lock, which is, the next project that I got to, fix the vapor lock issue. But part of that's the exhaust, by the way. Oh, and I got to order the tubular motor mounts that convert it to the car setup. Anyway, I got to do that and get the new motor mounts in to go along with the cab mounts and and I got to order the rotors and the bearings too, and the brake pads. So it's getting all that done too. Anyway, got a lot on the plate coming for that truck. But anyway, that truck puts it puts me in a happy place, man. I don't know what it is about it, because I can't really drive it that fast. I mean, it'll do 75 miles an hour all day long. It just sounds like you're in a boat. It's screaming going down the road. But it's real happy at about 63, 65 miles an hour, and it'll do that all day. But yeah, no, man, that thing it's like I say, it's already done its job in terms of just to put me in a happy place every time I get behind the wheel of that thing. And it needs all that work, so that should tell you how stoked I am about it. Rick, man, I appreciate that. Rick Grossi with the super chat, man, I appreciate that. Saying, there you go, brother B, man, I truly appreciate the support there, man. Wow, thank you very much. Man, I really appreciate that. Man, I don't know what to say. Thank y'all. By the way, thank y'all very much. And I just saw this comment. Lone Wolf saying, on the C10 Vapor Lock, put a trans cooler after the mechanical fuel pump and before the carburetor and the grill. So here's kind of where I'm at with that. I've heard of that before, by the way, using a fuel cooler. The issue that I have with the truck, so let me break it down for you like this. Whoever worked on the truck before, and I saw this when I bought the truck, and I didn't pay that much for it, so I didn't think much of it. But here's the thing. The fuel lines run along the passenger side of the truck. They come, and actually my truck does still have the bomb in the cab, so actually kind of makes life a little bit nice in a way. And it is a return style because it's a 72. And you would think that would help, but there's only so much they can overcome, because on the passenger side, they used headers these are long tube headers that are on the truck, and they hacked up part of the motor mount to make these things work. Now, normally that might not be a problem. The problem is that where the headers is about this far away from my feed and my return line. And so I've got the frame rail, and inside of the frame rail, so let's say this is the frame rail, inside of the frame rail, those lines are right here at the edge, and I've got header pipes literally sitting right next to them. Little wonder why the thing goes into heat soaking. The thing is if there's airflow around it, I can drive the truck. Just if I drove it for an hour the other day, I didn't have any problems with it. Even let it sit there idling. I mean, I've moved the fuel lines around a little bit, tried to, they're steel, but you can still kind of move them a little bit. Tried moving that stuff around, and it helped. I've also been fixing kinks in the fuel line, making sure that there's no restriction on the inlet side, on the suction side, because you have to remember that with any kind of a liquid, whenever you put it under a vacuum, you are lowering its boiling point. When that happens, it'll go into vapor lock, or it will vaporize more readily, as opposed to if it's been pressurized, it goes into its boiling point rises in essence. So getting rid of any kinks and anything like that's a restriction on the inlet side will just help things along. That seemed to help quite a bit too, but still running into the problem. So just getting the fuel lines away from the headers is going to be a huge deal. The part number, they're Headman headers, and you got to make sure you order the right ones, but it's the Headman headers and the shorter spark plugs are what's going to go on the truck. And it's the kind that on the passenger side, the tube just basically comes straight out and back and then down, as opposed to come out and down. You don't want that one. You want the one that comes out, and it'll actually be about that far away from that fuel line and above it. So I think that'll be okay. And then from there, it's just going to be, hopefully that fixes the problem. I think it's going to fix the problem, though. I'm pretty fairly certain that that'll help, if nothing else, really to mitigate that problem. And then from there, it's just going to be transmission and, maybe re-gear it. But from there, I don't even know if I want to re-gear it, because Next year, you're going to want to do the LS swap, and I think that's just kind of the right thing to do. You know, like I say, I'm saying 5.3, but really anything is going to be an upgrade in terms of horsepower. It's going to lose a little bit of tip-in torque, but I think the gearing and the transmission is going to more than make up for that, at least in first gear. And, you know, we'll see. We'll see just how dumb I decide to get with this thing. Maybe I'll find a 6-liter along the way. That'd be kind of cool. I don't think it's going to happen. Probably go 5.3. Stick with the overall theme of the truck. But in the process of this, it's going to get a cam. It'll just get like a little 220, 228 cam. Nothing major. Maybe a 222, 230, but nothing major. And we'll see what happens with it after that. I'll just leave it at that. I've got some a little bit longer term plans for that truck, but not really, you know, just maybe a turbo something. We'll see. You never know. Either turbo or nitrous, and I'm thinking I'm kind of leaning on nitrous a little bit, but I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. But I appreciate that, Lone Wolf. Rick's saying, for the new Nittos, man, I appreciate it. Let's see. Let me scroll back up here. I don't want to miss anybody. Time out. I've seen a couple of things. Jazz Hellcat, I just saw that coming through here. P1400 code. Yeah, aftermarket. That is the aftermarket. Calibration detected. Void warranty. That's that code. CJ's asking, what do I think about the 6.2 Boss V8 out of the 10 to 14 Ford Raptors? The same thing everybody else says, a boat anchor. Oh, then he's saying, beware of brand loyalists. Yeah, I'm not a brand loyalist. I fly the Mopar flag really high. Yeah, I don't subscribe to the whole brand loyalty thing. Let's see. Let me make sure I'm not missing anybody. Let's see. Here you go. HU37 saying, how important is gearing when it comes to using a centrifugal supercharger? If you added a Pro Charger to a 5.7 with a cam, would you go with a 370 or a 309 gears? Assuming that you had good tires and exhaust, I would probably go 309s, mainly because they're easy to get your hands on, and with that 8-speed, you really don't need much more at that point. 370s are good, but they're damn pricey. And the other downside to them is the fact that, you know, you're always going to be spinning that thing higher. But again, I mean, we lived with 373 gears forever with the Mustangs, right? And the Camaros. But now the reality is that first gear is going to be pretty aggressive. And I think you're going to blow through it too quick with that supercharger. So go 309s with a limited slip. Let's see. HU37, is there any tangible benefit to porting an intake when adding boost? Yeah, it depends on how bad the intake is, but I really wouldn't worry about it too much. If you're throwing boost at it, I really wouldn't worry about it too much. Speed Freak is asking, what pulley swaps are commonly done to the Demons and Red Eyes when modding? Do they go to a 285 or do they need different sizes due to different blower size? No. Most of the time, the guys go with 295s or 285s. I've seen them do 10% lowers and 275s, just like the Hellcats. Just depends on what your goals are with it, but commonly 285, same as a Hellcat. Let's see. CJ saying, I've even seen tuner imports fail on the dynos as well as on the racetrack. Oh yeah, it happens all the time, man. See them on road courses fail. See them at the drag strip fail. See them just idling in traffic fail. It just happens all the time. Let's see. A Water's saying, I was just watching your 2014 Ram 0 to 60. Oh yeah, that truck ran good, man. I kind of missed that truck. The original work truck for me, well, one of the original work trucks. See, CJ's saying that's why it's better to leave the car stock until the warranty runs out. And if you can't afford it, man, you got to do it. B5B saying, what up, B? Got the fist. I like it. Saying, great subject. I'm going supporting route on my Hellcat. Make that 707 work. Got the arm flex. I like it. Yeah, best thing to do, supporting mods, do the durability mods first, if nothing else. You know, again, trying to keep with the theme here on that point. Man, you always build your car from the back to the front too. It's not the sexy part. It's not the horsepower part. People get all geeked out over dyno numbers and things like that. Look, that's fine, but if you're going to be throwing that kind of power at it, what do you need? You need it in these things. You need a diff brakes. You need axles. You're going to need a drive shaft in some cases, most cases. That depends if you got a red eye or not. So there's a lot to consider, but if you build it durable, you never have to worry about those parts breaking. And more to the point, you don't have to worry about them leaving you stranded. But good point, brother. TU saying, B, I have to get going, but that Stroke 7.3 NA Scat Pack with that lumpy cam is on Instagram at 448 VG Scat. It sounds amazing. Take care. I like it. I'll check it out, man. I love that kind of stuff. So I will absolutely check that out, my friend. And I've heard some of those strokers, man. Listen, if y'all haven't heard some of the 426 and 440 strokers with like just ridiculous cams, like a 238 or a 242 cam, they sound mean. Nice. CJ's saying, hey, what did you think about that 6.2 Boss V8? Oh, I think I already hit that. Also, oh, wait, what happened? Oh, I think I already hit on those. HU37 saying, stuff breaks when you mod. Last year, a seal went on my Pro Charger. Had to send it back. Cost me a G. Apes. Sidewall split on a drag radial. Cost me $600. Cooked the cats. Replaced exhaust. $1,400. Man, yeah, that'll happen, brother. And that's just, that's what we do, man. It's race car stuff. Race car stuff breaks, man. What can I say? CJ saying Ford Racing do some performance mods to the new 7.3 Godzilla V8, like ported factory cylinder heads, upgraded cam, and it made well over 600 horsepower at the crank. Yeah, it did. Come to find out, that engine's a little bit different than what we were initially led to think. That thing is a freaking wolf in sheep's clothing. So it's not much bigger, if at all, than a 351 Windsor either. It's something to think about. It's a badass engine, but I'm not sure that it's really ever going to catch on. It'd be cool as shit to swap one into an F-150, but I gotta tell you something. I just, because it doesn't have an automotive application, I just don't see it really catching on anywhere. Unless you're going to put it into a Fox Modi or do a repower like on a Galaxy or something like that. That's where that thing would really shine. And CJ saying if you had the money, you'd do the 5-liter swap into his 96. A lot of guys would. CJ saying, hey B, what do you think about the Superformance AC Cobras? I used to own one. I owned it. And so here's the thing. Superformance is the only company that is, or at least was at the time, authorized by Shelby America to make their parts for them. So let's say if you got a CSX, whatever it was, 3000, CSX 6000, the re-release cars, Superformance out of South Africa was actually making parts for those. So they had the chassis, but they may not have window frames. So they used Superformance window frames. I want to say that Superformance may have even made the fiberglass body versions of the CSX cars. I mean, it was so much, there was so much of the Superformance product in the Shelby car that you can't really, they had different chassis configurations. In fact, Superformance, the later Mark III chassis is a whole lot better than the original Mark I that I had. That thing was a piece of shit. Because it couldn't take the power of a big block, and I had a 30 over 460 Super Cobra jet set up in mine. So anyway, awesome cars, lots of fun to drive, but they are a major handful. And if you're thinking about getting one, do not put a big block in it. Go with a pissed off 302 or 351, and it will scare the shit out of your ass, just like a big block, but it'll at least give you balance enough to recover once you get that thing scary. Mine, I could haze the tires from a roll, 4th gear, with at a TKO in it, so it's a 5-speed, with 370 gears. I could, from a roll, do rolling burnouts at 70 miles an hour with that car. So, yeah, car was nasty. It's the only car I've ever owned that I didn't take to the drag strip. It's the only car I've ever owned that scared me every time I drove it. Let's see. HU saying, when taking a car to the shop, it can't bail you out of all your problems. Many performance shops won't deal with passing emissions, especially if you live in a state with strict emissions rules. That's another thing that comes up. I mean, if you're worried about, that's a damn good point, HU. So I didn't even think about that, or didn't even touch upon it, didn't think about it while I was talking, I'll tell you that. If you're worried about a couple of things, emissions, warranty, if you're worried about getting a ticket because of those things, not because of the not having a warranty, you're not getting a ticket, but if you're worried about the emissions thing, don't do the things to your car that affect the emissions. That's kind of a thing, right? Look, it's one of the reasons why this cute little thing sitting behind me still has the factory catalytic converters. I keep it green. And that's, something that I'm kind of I got a thing about that. So, I want to keep it clean because I just don't want the headache. I don't want the hassle. Plus, it's damn near gone 9s with the stock cats at the stock boost. I'm only like 1/10 away. Now, granted, 1/10 is a far away, but I'm running 10 teens, stock cats, mean and green. Anyway, you get the idea, guys. If you're worried about that kind of thing, you got to stay away from those types of modifications. And also, look, just know this. This is not 1992. Catalytic converters have come so far since these old restrictive things that you may have been led to believe. I've done dyno testing. I've done track testing. I've done butt dyno testing. I'm here to tell you, there is no difference with modern catalytic converters and the power levels that they're designed to manage with now. They do a great job of it. Now, sure, you start getting into like ridiculous power numbers, yeah, you're gonna find a limitation to that, okay? But the reality is that these modern catalytic converters can manage a lot of power, a lot more than you might give them credit for it. Let's see, Felix is saying, very good advice here. The same stuff happens in the Evo world, if not worse. So frustrating, man. So yeah, in my brief stint with import stuff, the thing is, a lot of it does happen in again, as you say, worse on the import side. Because, I mean, there's a whole lot of bullshit, a whole lot of lies, really, about what works and what doesn't work. Very frustrating, though. BB78 saying, hey, B, any thoughts, experience with Inertia Motorsports in Pflugerville? No, I don't have. I've heard of them, but I've never dealt with them. But I have heard of them, and I've heard some good things. I mean, like I say, I haven't heard a lot, but the things that I did hear were good. Good call on Pflugerville, by the way. Lone Wolf Custom saying, what do you think the characteristics of a 5.7 Hemi with 12 and 12.5 to 1 compression and 6.1 camshaft would be? It'd be pretty good. I probably wouldn't run a 6.1 cam in it, though, because you'd be leaving a lot of power on the table with that 12.5 to 1 compression. I would instead go with something along the lines of probably first of all, I'd run the 6.1 intake, and I would run something along the lines of a 224, 230-ish cam intake center line of 109. I think that would really be a riot with that car and just be able to spin it and take advantage of that extra duration. Obviously, long tube headers would be a must here. And now that I'm thinking about it, at 12.5 to 1, I would probably cheat that to maybe 224, 232. And let it ride, lock out the cam. That would be a riot. C10 Mob saying, pipes for the win. Hell yeah, pipes for the win. We putting in work, y'all. Actually, you know, it's funny. I haven't had, the last time I had my car on that dyno, it made 666 horsepower to the rear wheels after I was playing around with the tune a little bit, and I just went, can't get any better than that. So, but yeah, I would agree 100%. Pipes for the win. Mexico City Street Outlaw say, what do you think about boosting a 392? Man, I love it. I think boosting 392 is a great idea, provided that you go through the steps that it will take to make it actually put up with the boost. So if you have a bone stock 392 and you want to throw a boost at it, because of the weight of the vehicle, I wouldn't really go above 7 or 8 pounds of boost. Somewhere in the range of about 550 horsepower to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. I just really wouldn't take it much farther than that. Number one, it's an 11 to 1 engine, and number two, you got to deal with fuel quality. Fuel quality is a major concern for me when you're talking about that kind of a compression ratio with the kind of weight that we're talking about with these cars. Now, if you're putting this in like a Dart, I'm not really going to worry so much about it at that point because you'd be down by 1,000 pounds. But as heavy as these cars are, it puts a lot of load on the engine. You got a lot of dwell time based on load. That's going to cause problems for rings, ring land. Things are going to get hot. Plus, here's one thing to consider, and I was thinking about this the other day, and I could not remember the number. I think it's 18 thousandths, or maybe it's 19 thousandths. Anyway, I was trying to remember the ring gap on a 392, and I couldn't. Oddly enough, I think it's the same for a 5.7, but the difference is the bore size. And the rolling rule of thumb is 7 thousandths per inch of bore. So in the 392's case, it'd be like around 30 thousandths of ring gap. 5.7, I wouldn't want to go below 25 thousandths of ring gap for boost. So, you know, to kind of give you guys an idea for really what I would do if I'm going to put boost into one of these things. Keep the boost low, be conservative, be a bit of a student about the fuel quality, just know what you're working with. That will kind of indicate it. If you try to go too aggressive though, you will find yourself regretting the decision to go boosted. Robert saying, Brother B, Revlon looking good as always. Thank you very much. Actually, she needs a little bit of a scrubby scrub. Been out playing around with her lately, and got a bunch of dead bugs on the front of that thing. Ken797 saying, some of the best advice I've gotten is at the drag strip. Absolutely, guys. I mean, that's one of the best places to check. And listen, I got to say this. Ken brings up a really good point here. Getting back to the original topic. So when we're talking about who to take your car to, you've got to, if possible, because the idea here is that there's an assumption that you're going to be taking this thing racing, you're going to be taking this thing to the drag strip, what have you. The guys that are taking their car to the drag strip, the guys with drag pack wheel and tire setups, the guys that are going out of their way to get to a drag strip, more than likely have got a little bit of insight to this topic. Don't be afraid to ask them what all they've done to their car. Just preface it with, hey, I've got one of these, whatever kind of car it is. I'm thinking about doing work. I saw that you've obviously got, or I see that you've always got some, obviously got some stuff done to your car. Can you give me some guidance? If you preface the conversation that way, you will have immediately made a brand new best friend in the pits. This guy is going to hook you up with all kinds of knowledge that you had no idea that you even wanted. If you come across as, hey man, what you got done to your car? Like you're trying to come up all hard or not come correct, you're going to get an ice cold reception at that point. And that isn't what you want. Come correct, be humble, ask the question though. find yourself at the drag strip. It's the absolute best place ever to get advice, because these guys, again, if they've got the time and they put in the effort to get to the drag strip and they're running their car, these are the guys that have probably done all of the legwork that you should be doing anyway, but they've done it and they're doing it in the real world. They're actually out there with their car in a controlled environment, which is kind of what you need when you're data logging, especially if you see the guy data logging. So let me kind of boil this down, kind of bring this down a little bit towards, you know, stuff that I do. And just how I am in general when guys ask me about my car. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, listen, I've got a Hellcat, or hey, I've got a 5.7, I've got a 6.4, whatever the case is, and they come at me like, man, I'm just thinking about what I can do to just get a little bit more out of it. Basically, you know where I'm coming with this, right? I'm going to go out of my way to try to help them. Number one, you know, we're all, you know, it's a Mopar family, right? So we're going to be that's going to be like a major thing that we're going to have in common. But the other thing is that he's going to be willing to learn and want to learn. And that type of a person and that type of a customer, you can't find a better partner in that. And that's really what you want to find is, you know, somebody that will give you the advice that you need, that you know is going to work, but more importantly, that will spare you the dime that you're going to spend on the parts that are only going to be there as a conversation piece, like long tube headers or, you know, cold air intake or whatever else for a 6.4 that typically doesn't get any pub. The guy's going to tell you, look, yeah, you'll get a gain, but it's not a gain, and you're looking for gains. That's the guy you want to. That's the guy you want to run into, and learn from. Damn, I've been up since early. Anyway, but thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. And again, Mile High Hemi, appreciate that. I'm just coming up on that on the chat here. Low Wolf is saying, do you think 6.4 valve springs are safe to run with a 6.1 camshaft? Yeah, the 6.4 has got an incredibly aggressive load profile. So yeah, you could definitely get away with those. Although I would probably suggest running a set of PSI 15, 16 springs just to be on the safe side. Might be a little bit much for that cam though. You'll be fine with the newer style springs in terms of rate, but if this is a proposition to buy used springs, I wouldn't go that route. Go with the PSI 15. I think it's 1515 is a step below 1516s for that camshaft, and you'll be fine. Here's the cool thing. If memory serves me correctly, the non-VVT cams have like a 114 LSA. They're actually pretty fun little cams. So, and really for that matter, oh, there he is, Justin just chimed. PSI 1515 ML is the part number. I love it. Justin, he just sent me a text message on that quick draw with that part number. Although I do prefer 1516s depending on the application. If you're going to throw boost at it, 1516 is the direction I would go. Because you have to remember that spring has to not only deal with the valve, it has to deal with the pressure. And how much pressure is that? Well, you take your circumference, you get your square inches of valve, and then you multiply that by how many PSI that you're running. Could be as much as 30 pounds of pressure trying to open that valve or to keep it from shutting once it is shut or on the way to being shut. Let's see. B5B saying, took my 07 Charger Daytona in for boost leak. It was going to be $300 to fix, tore into it and kept finding issues, letting me know as they found them. $300 became $2,000 saved for potential disaster though. That does happen a lot, man. That's the thing that sucks too. I've had cars, this is no joke. We've had cars to where every time we turned a wrench on it, we would find new problems hiding under whatever it was that we were taking apart. It just, and you hate making that phone call. Every time you call me, you need it. I told the guys, man, I hate making this phone call. there was one car, one Hellcat in particular, ended up loving this customer, super cool guy. That literally every time it got to the point where I almost didn't even want to give the guy updates on the car, because I knew that there was going to be something that I was going to have to tell him that was going to cost him money. And it was just, anyway, the guy was super cool about it. But anyway, it's always tough in that situation. Let's see. Oh, Smoking05 saying he's tuned his own DSM for years with ECM link. Very cool. I bought HP tuners for my TA392 and want to tune it myself, but I don't speak Mopar, as you say. Should I just buy a tune, or do you think I can tune it? I think you can tune it if you've been playing with your DSM for that long. Here's what I will tell you, though. And since you've been tuning for a while, I think you're going to understand exactly what I'm about to tell you. You will find very quickly that throwing any real amount of timing at that car is going to not really yield any real results. Keep your timing on the bottom right of that table at around 16.5, and you'll be real happy with the results, but you're not going to pick up a lot. And then you're going to want to interpolate, basically do your timing bathtub at peak torque, but more or less 16.5 degrees of timing is about as hard as you want to run that thing, depending on your fuel quality. I'm thinking 91 and iffy 93 here. And you can kind of take that, I think you know where I'm going with that, and run with it. But just stick to your normal bathtub, and I can only tell you that getting greedy with timing on a Hemi will only lead to disaster, especially with a 392. Less is more with that tune. Just know that coming into it. But I will say this, it's a good car to learn how to speak Mopar with. So just know that. Let's see. Killing Carrots is saying, did you ever change your thermostat? Yes, it's got a 180 in it, as a matter of fact. Alexander is saying, how hard is it to work on a Gen 3 Hemi versus an LS? What book, video, resources would you recommend on learning how to wrench on a Hemi? I think Richard Holner might have one, but it's not a manual. It's just some stuff that works. At least it did for the earlier Gen 3s. The Gen 3 versus the LS is the difference between a kick in the balls and somebody politely scratching your back for you. The Gen 3 Hemi is just not enthusiast friendly. If you want to do a cam swap, you're going to have to swap lifters. The problem is that swapping lifters involves removing the cylinder heads. That's a kick in the balls. LS, super easy. You couldn't ask for. LS is just super fun to work on too. So, as far as what resources, I mean, I would refer to any shop manual at that point. To learn how to work on an LS, I mean, you just find one on the side of the road, throw it in your trunk, bring it home, and start playing with it. It's that easy. The Hemi, a little bit more of a pain in the ass. For those that do it every day, they don't think anything of it because they've kind of got tricks and tips and things that they do just along the way. It's just part of doing the job. But for anybody that ever works on LSs, they question the sanity of anybody wanting to work on Gen 3 Hemi. But they run great, so they're a lot of fun. Let's see. Rick saying, hey, B. Rick saying, hey, y'all. Again, haha, thank you very much. I appreciate the contribution to the call. Wait a minute. Hold on. Jesus Christ. Quick break, man. I appreciate that so very much, man. Thank you. Damn. Saying the community is fortunate to have that B. Mason True. Sorry I missed you today, brother. Catch you mañana. Sounds good, brother. Thank you very much for the contribution, man. That's awesome. 2 thumbs up, brother. Thank you. Rip saying, just some more for the Nittos. Thanks for all the info. Thanks, Rip, man. I appreciate that a ton. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to be trying out the new ones, the G2s, too. So, once... it's funny, I was just talking about wait till you get paid before you modify stuff. Once the rotors show up, I'm getting the truck ready to get shipped off because I'm going to do some of the work, but Justin, getting called to the plate on this one, brother. He's going to hate me to death. No, Dr. Diff is going to be doing a ton of the work that I just don't have the facilities or the time for, or the tools for. So, yep, when that transmission gets rebuilt, we've got rotors, we got springs, we've got just miscellaneousness and whatever ends up showing up in the meantime. You know, it might have an exhaust system to do there too. So, but anyway, I appreciate that so much, guys. I truly do appreciate it. More than you know, guys. I really do. Very much appreciate that, guys. So much. Let's see. Lone Wolf. Oh, this is one that I touched on earlier. Saying on the C10 vapor lock, put a trans cooler after the mechanical fuel pump and before the carburetor and the grill. Chatted about that a little bit earlier. Robert saying, currently building a 78 440 I pulled from a Winnebago, same casting as the performance engines. Yep, high nickel block. Using all new rotating assembly from 440 source and aluminum top end. Very nice. Cool thing about the 440. So if you guys, a lot of you guys know this. I've been a dyno operator at a couple of points in my life. And one of them was when I was a lot younger. And I've had an opportunity to drive some pretty cool cars. One of my favorite cars to drive were always the B-body big block cars. So, you know, a 383 or a 440 Roadrunner was one of the cars that I just loved to drive because it was this instant torque hit. And it's one of the things that, you know, people say, well, have you ever driven a Gen 2 Hemi? Yeah, I have. Driven a couple of them, as a matter of fact. And they didn't really compare to the 440 just in terms of just driving the thing around. They were fun to wind out, but when the 440 shift point hit, the Hemi was just getting interesting. But interesting fact, little factoid, port velocity on a 440 at 4,700 RPM is the same as the port velocity on a Hemi at 6,200 RPM. That is the difference in head flow between the two. So 4,700 RPM is the same port velocity, not airflow, but the same port velocity. In other words, the air is moving the same speed as the Gen 2 Hemi at 6,200 RPM. Pretty crazy stuff. Rick's saying, for the Nittos, hell yeah, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to getting those on the car too, because these old Nittos are looking pretty shy. Robert Eaton saying, 3,000 converter going in my scat, leave the rest of trans alone. Sorry, just joining. No, you're going to need to do quite a bit of tuning to get that thing to act exactly right. You're going to have fill time. You're going to have shift timing. You're going to have shift scheduling. Upshift is definitely going to need to get switched around. Downshift, for sure, would need to be switched around. Yeah, you've got quite a bit that you're going to have to mess with on that thing. So, as far as the tuning goes, as far as the rest of the trans goes, yeah, I mean, mechanically, you can just leave the rest of that alone. Let's see, 6.4 Hemi Power saying, finally tuned, can tune my 2017 Scat Pack, and it woke up big time. Yep. Would a tune like J Green, et cetera, advance the performance over the Diablo? Yeah, it does. But you got to remember a few things. The canned tunes are just that. They've got to be able to work with a lot of different fuel qualities and a lot of different conditions. A custom tune is going to be a little bit more specific to your application. So I would probably go that route if there's the budget for it. But I've had the problem is that I've had canned tunes that were junk. I had one in my first Ram that, what did I do? I took 2 degrees of timing out of it and added fuel to it just to keep it from low speed spark knock. So, and that's the other thing with a canned tune, you don't have any you don't have anybody going over data logs with you, and that can make the difference between the two, working really well and just kind of being lackluster, like so-so, you know. So I would say if it's in the budget, save up. The main thing I will tell you though is just keep an ear open for any type of tip-in spark knock. Make sure that you're running really good gas with that thing too. And like I say, I've had it go both ways with me on those types of tunes. So kind of word to the wise on that. Hang on just a second. Hey guys. Racer X, man, I appreciate that. Thank you for the contribution, brother, saying I want to be like you when I grow up. You're the man, man. I appreciate that, buddy. I really do. Thank you so much for the contribution to the cause, my man. I definitely appreciate it very much. And of course, as always, check out Racer X. He's always got great content, always fun content. So if you're not a member of his brigade, I would get over there quickly. Let's see. Ooh, here we go. But thank you very much, brother. I appreciate that. Hope things are going well. Still waiting to get my contraption to the track. Oh, that reminds me. So be on the lookout. I'll be doing a how-to video on... I can't believe this shit. So, I had a bit of a Friday flashback. So I was in Revlon, literally where the car is sitting right now, and I had the tune pulled up, but I had the scanner more than anything pulled up, and I was trying to find where I could log the PIDs, or what the PID was to log the intercooler pump RPM. And actually, I don't think you're monitoring RPM, it's really more pulse width. It's a pulse width modulation. So I'm sitting there and I've got the key in the on position, and I hear this little ding, and I look over, it's the ABS light. Like, what the hell? It freaking threw a check engine light and the car wasn't even running. Like, how do you get fired on your day off? So anyway, it's an ABS light, not technically a check engine light, but still, same difference, come on. So here's the funny thing. I'm sitting there and I'm going, you've got to be kidding me. And you guys may remember, I rerouted the wheel speed sensor on the driver's side rear of the car. And it had a little bit of rubbing, and I thought, man, I might end up having to replace this thing. But in the meantime, I'm just going to repair where it had frayed the wire a little bit, rerouted it, kind of made it actually better than I think it came from the factory, being honest. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. You can see what I did. It's kind of quick. But if you're running 17s, you got to do that. Anyway, so I figured it was that. But what I did is I went in and I did there's a function in the systems menu on the scanner where you can do like an ABS reset and all that. So I was ABS reset it, and I thought, well, wait a minute. What if it's a different speed sensor? Did I just reset it? Did I just screw up? So anyway, fire up the car, back it out of the driveway. Sure enough, trips it straight away. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I've been driving the car for like 20 minutes the other day. Didn't have any issues with it. Okay, so it's got to be the one in the back. It's got to be long story short, no, it's the passenger front, the exact opposite end of the car. Anyway, the reason why this is kind of funny is, number one, my car has the passenger side front speed sensor go out. It is as though all of them have the passenger side front speed sensor go out from 2015. I don't know what the deal is with that. But two, I had bought this scanner tool. Anyway, it actually bailed me out. Hang on, let me find this thing. This thing is ancient. Hang on. Is it still in here? Y'all are going to laugh when you see this. Nice shot of my fat ass hanging out of the car there. All right, check this out. So I've got this old ass Innova 3150. I can't remember how old this thing is. Anyway, I bought this when my wife and I had actually first started dating. She was having some problems with the Jeep, and I didn't have a scanner for the vet. So I figured I would just pick one up. Anyway, this thing can actually pull ABS codes. And since it can pull ABS codes, it can find out what's wrong with it. It's not the same as doing just a regular OBD2 check, like when you're doing like through the CAN bus for normal check engine codes. This one will do the ABS. It also does SRS codes too, supplemental restraint systems, as well as freeze frame and all this other stuff. Anyway, but it does that. Didn't even realize this thing did all that. This thing's so old. I actually almost had forgotten I even had this thing anymore. Went in there and you know, pulled up the ABS code. It for sure is passenger side front speed sensor. Wow. So anyway, funny story for you. The car threw a code, wasn't even moving when it threw the code. I thought it was one thing. This old scanner that I've got ended up being the thing that saved me probably $100 just in the sensor and going to fetch it and installing it myself. But you know, saved me a bunch of time. So anyway, that scanner, just in case you need it, I don't know how much these things, how the hell did that just happen? I don't know how much these things really are. I've forgotten about it. It's been way too long. But it's an Innova 3150, and that's the scanner that I picked up. I'm sure that I spent way too much money on this thing when they first came out, and I bet you there's cheaper ones out there, but this is the one that worked for me, and it's been around for this number of years, and it still works like a beast. So there's that. Anyway, I thought y'all would get a kick out of that. Let's see. Dr. Div saying, I'm late, but I'm in. What up, B? What up, Doc? Let's see. GYSRT8 saying, just got my Mopar last month. Very nice. Congratulations. Saying you got a 6.1. Oh, it's 6.1 Charger. Very nice. Any recommended mods for good gains without sacrificing low-end torque? I've seen some of your videos about the 6.1, but since I got one, I'm really looking for advice. All right, well, here's the fun thing about the 6.4. Everything works on a 6.4. The camshaft profile is a little bit nicer in terms of scavenging when it comes to long tube headers. So you'll get a bit of a bump out of long tube headers. The tune will be something that you'll want to look into. Aside from that, that's really about it. I would stick with a tune, long tube headers, and really call it good at that point. That'll get you to a pretty healthy spot with that car, and I think you'll be real happy with it for a long time. You can go with a Hellcat throttle body. I think it's a little bit of overkill for that car. Ported throttle body on the 6.1 intakes tend to work fairly well too. So get a through ported Fastman throttle body. I think that would be everything that I would do to cap that thing off, throw a cane in, filter, drop-in filter in it, and go out and have a ball with that thing. Those are a lot of fun to drive, by the way, especially when they've got a nice tune, good transmission tune. Definitely fun. Let's see. 6.4 Heavy Power saying SRT8 Diablo tune ASAP. I like it. Stephen Brad saying 6th gear on my manual SRT8 is almost pointless unless I'm going 100 miles an hour. Anybody else changing rear end ratios? Man, I wish they had a 0.67 as opposed to a 0.50 overdrive, because you're right, that 5th gear is a dog to drive. It's even on the freeway, you're right, unless you're doing about 90 miles an hour, not even worth it. But you've already got the most aggressive gear that they sell. So that's the way it is, brother. Rick Grossi saying, just turned on the full coverage insurance yesterday on my Challenger for the first time this year. Can't wait to get them out and finally to the track. I'll tell you what, I have been itching to get back to the track. I've got some, well, obviously I got to do this wheel speed sensor on this thing. Can't do anything with it until then because it won't go into sport mode for the traction control. So, I'm sorry, not for the traction, but for the transmission control. It won't go into sport mode. Kind of a nice side effect of that. But yeah, anyway. Duays say at 6.4 Hemi power. I'm definitely gonna invest in Diablo tuner. The car has no cats or mufflers with no check engine light, so I'm not sure if there's a tune on it already or not. I bet that there is. Rick Gross is saying very frustrating. That's all 3/4 mile tracks here, all 3-hour drive from my house. Ooh, damn, that's a long way. Might be able to make a day trip out of it though. If there's some, fun things to do in the area, maybe make a weekend out of it. 6.4 Hemi powers. He's hanging out with G-Way right now. Rift is saying, I'm looking for a 6-cylinder charger to get my daughter for her birthday. How reliable is that motor? She turns 18 tomorrow. So I don't have a ton of experience with those cars, but I do know that they get the hell beaten out of them by rental car companies, and they seem to hold together pretty well. So if you use that kind of logic, I would say that they're okay. I mean, I think that they're pretty good all in all. I've never heard of any specific issues with them. Obviously, there's some that are going to be a lot more educated on it than I am because, the next 6-cylinder, 3.6 car that I see would maybe be the second one that I've ever really even had to pay attention to. So, but I do know that car is fairly well vetted in terms of reliability. The main thing though is if you're picking one up used, I mean, just use your best judgment, man. I mean, again, you're talking about cars that are sometimes beaten on pretty hard, and if they're maintained really well, then you'll be okay. But again, I just haven't heard of any major issues with those cars. I think it'll be okay. Kevin Collins said, hey Mason, I just want a Dr. Div Joker cam, Borla type exhaust, and Cook's headers on a 2014 RT Classic. What are your thoughts on this build? I think it's an amazing idea. Joker cam is a lot of fun in a 5.7. It sounds amazing, so go that route for sure. Borla exhaust sounds great and they last forever. Cook's headers are really good and the fitment is amazing on those, and they are incredibly durable. So I think you're off to a really strong start. I think it's going to be a really fun car. I think you're going to like that a ton. See, Arthur Wallace saying 3.6 Pentastar is a workhorse. I think we do just fine for it. Yeah, I agree with that. I bet it will. Arthur Wallace saying 446 pack, got the arm flex. I like it. Ethan Hack saying best numbers to the wheel possible on a full bolt-on 85 RT Challenger. I feel like these cars need a boost. Dodge, no kidding, right? Also, what's the max amount of power 5.7 can take with boost? Well, max and best and all that kind of get a little bit tough to sort through. So full bolt-on E85 RT. Honestly, I've seen them up in the 385. This is on a Mustang dyno too, by the way. I've seen them up in the 375, 385 horsepower range. I have not seen one crest 400 on a Mustang dyno, but I'm not saying that you can't do it. In fact, that Joker package might actually do it. I mean, we're talking a package that is known to run really strong. I mean, you get that, you put your foot in it, that thing gets above about 2,500 RPM and it's going to start coming alive. So, be looking for a number somewhere in there. One of the numbers we used to see a lot, and these were customer cars. These weren't any of the cams that I had spec'd. Weirdly enough, because we didn't get a lot of 5.7s. We got a lot of 6.4s, but not a lot of 5.7s. But 365 was a number that we would see a lot on the Mustang dyno, so just under 400 on a dyno jet. That's fairly common for a very healthy 5.7. And then also, what's the max amount of power a 5.7 can take with boost? Well, depends on what kind of boost. Turbo is going to make the most, and it's going to be the easiest on the engine. A PD blower, here's the thing. Okay, so instead of talking about max, because they're forged internals, ported heads, what intake, what kind of boost we talking? I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go. I mean, you can make over 1,000 words. Shit, Dr. Diff's making over 800 with his right now. So, I mean, there's that to consider. And that thing runs, it's a 10-second, 5,500 pound truck. I mean, do the math on that thing, and I think you'll find it's a little over 800 to the wheel, or 800 somewhere. At least it's 800 somewhere. I think it's to the crank. Yeah, about 800 to the crank. Either way, made a ton of power. Depends on what direction you really want to go with it in terms of making power. But that is, and what fuel too, by the way. So gasoline, regular 93 octane, with an E-Force, all of the 5.7s I saw, by the way, with an E-Force, the older E-Force, were making identical horsepower and torque to the 392. So say 415, 420 to the rear wheels. That being said, they had a little bit more mid-range torque than a 392 with that E-Force kit, with a tune, an aftermarket tune to go along with that E-Force kit. So just to kind of give you guys an idea for how it goes. And then Dr. Diff is saying, or Ignite 98, good fuel. Did I miss something, Doc? What did I miss? Anyway, let's see. Rip is saying, I live in California, so I'm not going through the whole trouble of taking my cats off. Yeah, I wouldn't either. I've already proven. Listen, the funny thing is, drag testing the Hellcats, stock boost level, we found that taking the cats off of them and just adjusting the tune for no cats, cars got slower. And I know that, you know, there's no such thing as a good amount of back pressure, whatever. It's all about velocity. I still can't explain that, but the cars just felt, what's the right word for it? They just felt lazier. I don't know. Anyway, I always had mine on. I never took mine off, but I know guys that did, and they had made adjustments for it, and no difference. Hang on just a second. Oh, man. Hang on. Robin, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Saying I appreciate the advice you give me on ported intake manifold. Less time for the Scat Pack. Oh, man, thank you very much. I appreciate the contribution, brother. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see. Bear with me here. Oop. Sorry, I blew past where I was, and now I'm trying to find it again. Sorry, guys. Riff saying, also saying, so like I told you before, I am putting a lower pulley on my Hellcat, but because of the crappy gas here in California, do you think it would be okay to buy a few cans of 109 and add it every so often? Yeah, I mean, that would be fine. Boosting, Torco, just as good. Guys are having good results. I really wouldn't worry too much about the brand that you go with, but it's definitely not a bad idea to mix in a little bit of, you know, the Sunoco 104 or MS 109, or, you know, just something, you know, like even if it's only a 10-to-1 ratio, give it just a little bit of love, and that can help you quite a bit. No doubt about it. And then Dr. Diff saying Ignite 98 too, for sure. Scott Speed saying, what up, Mason? Got the arm flex. I like it. Riff 33 saying, adding to the 91 for sure. Let's see. Dr. Diff saying Lone Star. Hanging out with Lone Star right now. Dr. Diff saying, yes, Dr. Diff for the win on anything flow or camshaft related. Sorry, but I feel I'm probably the smartest person when it comes to 5.7. Just call me when you get ready. Dr. Diff's got the 5.7 thing sorted out, especially under boost, man. That thing screams Scott saying it'd be awesome to go racing, but his track is shut down. That sucks, man. HU37 saying, when boosting on 392, centrifugal or positive displacement? I'd say centrifugal. The reason why? That transmission is going to get stung before the anything else will with that car. If you're on, if you're running a positive displacement supercharger, the reason why is you got this massive torque hit down low, got a lot of weight. HP 70 doesn't really work well with that. About the limit. Now, granted, this is on a sticky tire. If you're on stock tires, and this is where all the caveats have to start coming into place. If you're on stock tires, positive displacement is going to be a little bit more fun to drive. You're going to have a bump of about 130 horsepower, 120 horsepower ish. If you decide to go with like that E-Force kit. So you're looking at, say, 560, 570 to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. Not quite Hellcat power, but damn close, and all the while it'll be a little bit snappier than the Hellcat because of the higher compression. So there's at least that to consider along the way. But overall, yeah, if you're gonna ever run it on a sticky tire, the centrifugal is gonna save your transmission, just because, you know, the rise and boost curve, just can't say that enough. So if I were to put one on, if I owned a 392 and I was going to put a supercharger on it, it'd be a centrifugal supercharger, hands down. I wouldn't even entertain a positive displacement for a 392, only because I do spend so much time at the drag strip, and that's where I would break it, unfortunately. Let's see. Rick's saying he would think the Senti would be better on that motor. Yeah, it would be. Again, it's kind of situationally specific, but yeah, it is better in my opinion. Zephyr R&D saying, Professor Mason got the fist bump. I like it, saying, we all pick your brain about motor, trans, diff. Would you mind doing a deep dive into suspension, camber toe, corner balancing, etc.? I may do that. It's been a while since I've even come around that, though. Yeah, I might do that at some point. It's tough because there's a lot of different takes on suspension, though, so I can only really give you what I've seen works. But I haven't really messed with the Challengers all that much. I can tell you, though, it's more important than you might think, even on a drag race car. That alignment and that suspension setup is going to be fairly important, even though I haven't touched it on mine. One of the things you got to consider is, if you're doing a lot of autocross, what tires are you going to run? And the other thing too on that, just to that point, a lot of guys get way too aggressive on camber. They'll go -2.5 and the thing starts to look kind of funky. I will tell you this, just from an initial setup point of view, 2 degrees negative is typically going to get you where you need to be on the front. About 1 1/4, if you can pull it off for the rears, is about where you'd want to be. If you're doing autocross, if you're doing a lot of closed circuit, in other words, road racing with them, I would maybe bring in the front camber to like 175-ish, just to give you a little bit better turn-in feel, so it doesn't push under higher speeds. And I would probably, you'd probably stick with the rears. The rears will be fine at like 1 1/4. 1.5. I wouldn't go 1.5. That's too much for the rears. The problem with the rear, it's an independent rear suspension, and as it flexes, you're getting more, negative camber in, but your contact patches is going away, and you're going to have to really be driving with your foot on the throttle to load the rear end up to take advantage of any amount of negative camber that you're going to have in the rear. So that's why I say you don't have to go as aggressive with the rear. These cars do actually have good solid turn in, a lot better than you might think. They don't push as easily as you might think. So you can get away with running less negative camber with them. They actually do pretty well. But there are guys I know at Motorsport Ranch that run Hellcats, SRTs, Scat Packs. I've never really picked their brain on suspension, but I'd love to someday. Dr. saying, you want these radials I got on? Let's see. Maybe. Are we going to video it at all? Video, man, am I missing something? What happened here? Maybe. I'll be giving you a shout, though, on that. But, yeah, you're talking about the truck, then yeah, probably. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Riff saying, I want my Hellcat to be like yours when I grow up, Racer X. He's got a great package, by the way. That Bravo package is a known very, very fast and very, very durable package. The Square Scat Bag's got his thumbs up. Riff saying, my passenger side sensor went out. Yep. Mine did too. HU37 saying, my first car was a Chrysler 300 with a 440 Magnum. That'd be a fun car, actually. I had a blast with it. It was real torquey. Early smog era cars were such a disappointment. The low point in the auto industry, very much so. Robert Rojas saying, I appreciate the advice you gave me on ported intake manifold. Oh, last time I think I talked about that. Thank you very much. Got the high five. Lone Wolf saying the 3.5 V6 that's in the Challenger Chargers are bad on losing oil pressure and lifters and clattering to death. I didn't know that. Yeesh. I wonder if that's upkeep related. I wonder if that's, just from those particular owners not really staying on top of the oil changes and things like that, regular maintenance. Let's see. Rips is asking if I'm doing hard pulls from a low speed in my Hellcat, is it safer to have traction control off? I ask because when it's in default, it pulls to the left or right in the back. That's weird. Never had one do that. Although it may be sensing a little bit too much wheel speed and just chopping throttle, and you're getting some of that going. But no, I run mine in sport all the time. I've never had one at Goofy though in default. CFL James, thank you very much. Hopefully I didn't miss you, buddy. Thank you very much for the contribution to the cause, man. I do appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. Oh, Rip is saying, he's talking about it getting kind of funky, saying, which does not seem safe. I would rather have both tires spin evenly than try to catch on either side. Of course, not spin at all would be better. Yeah, like I said, I've never heard of one doing that. That's so weird. Definitely get that checked out. So the thing is that system, if it's derived from the same system that the Mercedes has, part of its protocol on the Mercedes is that they have open diff, but they use the brakes, and they use it's kind of a weird system, but they use the traction control is using brakes to keep wheel spin at basically the same. At least that's how it was on my E63. So yeah, but I would check and make sure something's not weird with that. Because I've never heard of that before. Either that, or it's just you're getting some wheel spin and you're sensing how it's trying to quell it, then it goes away, then tries to quell it some more, then goes away. Like it gets it sorted out, then it lets it go again, and it's like so you might be getting some of that, but I've never experienced that. White Knuckle RT saying, what up, Ryan? Thank you very much. Got the thumbs up and the fist bump saying, nice little session on the bag earlier. Oh yeah. Is your track open yet? Up in Canada here, we're still on private rental only. We are open. I still need to get this thing ready, but no, we are open. I don't think there's any limit on that. And yeah, if y'all didn't see it, so the gym's just opened back up down here, and I've been sitting around getting fat and out of shape. So I did what I had done in the past. I had filmed me just playing around with the speed bag. It was after I had done, I think that was my 7th round on the heavy bag. And what I'll do is I'll do heavy bag, and then I'll do, during my rest, I'll just work the speed bag. I'm not usually really ripping it. I'm just staying active during that 1 minute rest. So I'm doing 1 minute on, 1 minute off, 2 on, 1 off, 3 on, 1 off, whatever I'm doing. So anyway, that was my last one. It was like a cool down thing, and my hands felt like they were made out of bricks and lead, and I looked pathetic, but it was just me kind of playing around, goofing off, and just saying, look, man, I mean, it doesn't have to be pretty. Just get out there and keep grinding. Whatever you're doing, just keep grinding at it, because we're all hurting right now. We're all feeling it. But thanks, man. I appreciate that. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I got to wake up early in the morning. I got to hit that again. Kevin saying, thank you very much, by the way, Kevin, saying modding with a car note is lunacy. Would you agree? Man, it depends on why you've got the car note. If you've got the cash to cover it and you're just leaning on a real low interest payment, then yeah. I mean, most guys will mod with a car note. My only thing with that is just know that you're not going to get a lot of that money back. And you bring up a really good point, by the way, Kevin. I appreciate this. Just know that whenever you're modding your vehicle, there is no way you're getting that money back. And people say, well, you don't do it because it's an investment. You do it because it's fun and all of that. Look, I understand that mentality. Believe me, I do. But let me tell you something. There's nothing worse than spending that money if you don't have it and then expecting to see it again. If you're going to mod your car, again, that money's gone. So, just the main thing is, if you're having fun and you can afford it comfortably, then you're in good shape. And look, ain't no sin in saving up. I've eaten a lot of beanie weenies, ramen noodles, cans of tuna fish. So in an effort to save up to buy anything, especially when I was a kid. I mean, damn, the make your own pizza thing. Yeah, I'm pretty much Chef Boyardee on that thing. You get one of those pizza crusts, throw it in the oven. Oh, y'all gonna love this. Okay, pizza crust. Here's the ingredients. This is the sophisticated diet that I was working with when I was a younger dumbass. Cook your own pizza crust. Chef Boyardee, either spaghetti or really anything. It doesn't matter, just as long as it's got that dude's face on it. SpaghettiOs, though, were the shit in this thing. We would take those things, put them in the oven, and basically make a big piece of toast. All right. If you had butter, that means you were just living. I mean, you just had the shit, right? So you talk about being broke, man. I've been broke on a level that's just crazy. So take the big bread thing. If you got a little bit of butter to spread on it, that's fine, but it doesn't matter because you'll never taste it. Take the thing out of the oven, and then take a can of Chef Boyardee spaghetti or SpaghettiOs or ravioli. Now, if you had ravioli, you were living right. Anyway, take the ravioli, pour it on your probably burnt piece of pizza bread, and then take a fork and just kind of mash it all up and cut it up. It sounds gross as fuck, I get it, man, but listen, if you're about a 6-pack of Keystone Tall Boys into the night, that is a gourmet feast, bro, I'm telling you. So, anyway, don't take dietary advice from me, but that shit tastes so good. And if you're about halfway hammered anyway, yay. And if you got Parmesan cheese to go with it, then forget about it. That's date night, son. That's when you call the chicks up, man. They love that kind of cooking too. Yeah, so anyway, sorry. Trip down memory lane, dude. Can't help it. HU37 saying, Cooks claims with their green cats you won't lose power and in some cases gain a little. You will not lose any power with those cats, I promise you that. White Knuckle RT, man, again, I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much for the contribution. Say little help for the fishbowl to unfishbowl a car. I know, I've got to get that thing tinted. I will at some point. But I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I do need to de-fishbowl that thing badly. Gotta clean it up too. God, it's dirty. And it's getting to the point where it's just like grimy too. I really do need to clean it up. Jamie saying, if you still own your 392, which cam of yours would you put in it? I would put the sniper cam in it from Dr. Diff. That's a cam that I came up with specifically for that car. Dr. Diff is asking, what's your thoughts on my piggyback system for the air and for our air and spark 48 by 48 display? I don't know. I haven't really, I mean, it's a piggyback, so, you know, I'm not a big fan of piggybacks, to be honest with you. I would rather have complete control. If something goes haywire with the piggyback, that could be bad. So, you know, I would say stick with a, stick with HP if at all possible. I know there's some more fine tuning that you can maybe get with that. But I think that if you change some parameters with HP, you might be able to get that where it needs to be too. So, I would look a little bit deeper into the HP before I started to make the switch over to a piggyback. But then again, I don't have that much experience with them, so there's that. Let's see. Albert saying, Master Mason just turned my 392 into a garage queen weekend warrior. Thanks to you. Thank you very much. Made an 02 Mustang GT my daily. Very fun car for a daily, by the way. What should I mod on the Stang? Cold air, throttle body? Yeah, 96 to 2004. I used Mustang GTs as my daily. And I had them on job sites. I had them, they were awesome to use as work cars because they were fun to drive. They were pretty fast. They got good gas mileage. And I'd usually buy another one about every 2 years, but I would put 80, 90,000 miles on them before I'd get rid of them. So usually about 40 to 50,000 miles per year is what I was putting on them. They're real durable cars. So yeah, I like it. Very nice. Alex, thank you very much. Again, for that contribution, we talked about the difference between a Gen 3 and an LS. Let's see. Pearl saying, thank you for all that you do. Well, thank you very much for hanging out with us, man. I just got a scat pack and I'm learning a lot from you. Well, thank you very much. I hope I can help. CFL James saying, got $10 in saying, more money. I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much. I hope I'm getting all you guys in a timestamp too, because I'm having a hard time, let's see, keeping up with this feed here. Let's see. Scat Speed's laughing at me. I think I'm just catching up to him as he's hearing me talk about the pizza. Rip is saying, I got to take off. Yeah, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Rip. I appreciate it. He's saying, yeah, my car is the same as your color as yours, and it's covered in pollen. Mine is covered in pollen. Down here, every tree is going through like pollen frenzy, and this has been a funky year for, just allergies in general for me, so it's been a real treat. Low Wolf saying, take some Hungry Man soup and some instant potatoes, mix them together. It's a good meal. Actually, that's real good. What he's talking about is you take Hungry Man. If you don't remember the Hungry Man, it's the beef that you got to get. You take the Hungry Man. I've done this before, so me and Lone Star know what we're talking about here. Take your Hungry Man, and what you do is get the powder. If you had the powdered mashed potatoes, you would mix, like get a bowl, like a cereal bowl, and put about maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches of powdered potatoes in there. Little bit of pepper, whatever, doesn't matter, you ain't gonna taste it. Bust open the Hungry Man and dump the Hungry Man into that and mix it up really good, and then nuke that sucker for about 45 to 50 seconds. When that thing comes out, it's gonna be like this shepherd's pie thing. and it's going to be one of the best things you will have ever eaten that day, especially when you've been working your ass off, been on job sites all day, and the last thing you want to do is think. That is one of the best things you can have. We used to have powdered potatoes, powdered milk on hand. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, man. I used to make that every day. Some good stuff. Destroyer 1320 saying Mason is a sensei on all things Mopar, man. I appreciate that. Alex is asking, I didn't hear you answer my original question. I had to leave the stream for a while and couldn't find it by backtracking. Alex, let's see if I missed something. I hope I didn't. How hard is it to work on a Gen 3 Hemi versus an LS? Saying I've never wrenched on an engine before. This is one that we did chat about, but I'd love to revisit it with you, buddy. So the difference between working on a Gen 3 Hemi and working on an LS, as I've stated before, it's like the difference between a kick in the nuts and somebody being polite and scratching your back. The Gen 3 is only difficult in that it is more involved to work on. For example, if you want to do a cam swap, you're going to have to remove cylinder heads. That can be a bit of a pain in the ass. Well, at least if you're swapping lifters. So there's that to consider, which you probably should be doing anyway. Aside from that, it's really more, to be honest with you, it's really more the platform than anything else. The LX platform can be a bit of a pain in the ass to work on because right about here, the way that it's set up, the unibody, there's really not as much room in that engine compartment. I'm doing this because apparently when I do that, it illustrates it perfectly, which if you've never seen it, this makes no sense at all. I just realized how dumb I look. That's pretty fun. Anyway, there's just not that much room in here also. So there's at least that to consider. But the reality is that the LS is far and away easier to work on. And the reality is that you can find an LS pretty much anywhere. You can go to the junkyard, pull it, just grab you a 4.8 or a 5.3, throw it in the back of your truck, and you can just learn by just disassembling it and reassembling it. It's so easy to work on. It's as easy as you can imagine anything as complicated as an engine to work on to be. Great engines though, lots of upshot, lots of power, very efficient, high power to weight ratio. The Hemi has all of that too. It's just so much more fiddly. Now, the guys that have been working on them for a long time, they're used to it. They know there's workarounds, there's things they can do to make it work. But for the guys that aren't used to working on them and are used to working on LSs, they, again, will question the sanity of anybody wanting to work on a Gen 3. Let's see. So hopefully that was the question. Let's see. Destroyer saying beef ramen with corned beef. Haven't had that one. Sounds pretty good though. Alexander is saying, and that shepherd's pie thing sounds good. Recommend tossing in a little Guinness. Guinness shepherd's pie is incredible. I've had Guinness with the shepherd's pie, but I didn't think to put it in there with it. I used to go through a lot of Guinness, and that's definitely one of my weapons of choice. Scat Speed is saying, I can't find any 13s, 20s for sale. I guess they're all special order cars now. They may be, yeah. Kind of a limited run on that one. So, but yeah, definitely a special order. HU37 saying, eating on a budget, homemade tomato soup, add hot water to ketchup with crackers. So here's actually one for you for that. So the only reason why I don't like that is because ketchup has a lot of sugar in it, and I don't like sugary soup. But I have made just the stew where you get tomatoes, water, add in a little bit of mustard, salt, pepper, and boil it. And take that and slice it up and make sandwiches out of it. I've done the tomato sandwich route before. And it's kind of like, if you do it right, it's got the consistency of like a meatloaf sandwich. Now, if you really want to get, like, if you want to mind fuck yourself into thinking you're really on point, get some Worcestershire sauce, if I'm even saying that the right way. When you take the tomato out of the thing and you carve it up, tag it with Worcestershire sauce. That'll kind of accentuate the, you know, is it meatloaf? Is it not? What is this texturized thing that I'm putting in my mouth? I've done that too. I've done all kinds of interesting and creative things with food, especially when you're broke. Because when you're broke, everything is an adventure, really. I mean, just the fact that you've got the stuff there, you're thankful for it, right? So, yeah, the pizza thing though, if you've never done it, like I say, you've got to be well on your way to having a good time to really appreciate the certain nuances of that. But if you roll with the ravioli and the Parmesan cheese, dude, I'm telling you, it can change your perception of what quality pizza really is. Let's see. Scat Speed is saying, oh yeah, Destroyer saying, yeah, the 1320 2020 is hard to find. And Scat Speed said, I'm really tempted to trade in for a Hellraiser 1320. You know, I don't know. 1320 is cool. I just don't know. I think the 1320 fell on some deaf ears in a way because, I mean, look, let's face it, the 1320 was great, but it didn't offer up anything other than technology. And I think what a lot of folks were really hoping for was a power bump, some kind of an upgrade, something to really drive home that that Mopar mentality of, you know, just we are the bully, we are the brawler. You know, the rest of, you know, the rest of it doesn't matter. They were looking for a 426, and when the 1320 didn't come out with one, I think that's where a lot of guys got a little bit, I don't know, I think they're a little bit bummed out. You know, I'm not going to go so far as to say, they felt disenfranchised because Mopar let them down. Nobody was really feeling that way. I think that because there wasn't a power bump, and it was just a technology upgrade, I think some guys got a little bummed out about that. But let's see. Pearl's saying, Dylan Driver of a 2016 6-speed Scat. I know to get the intake ported and change the headers. Haven't done yet. Until then, I'm thinking I'm lacking when it comes to switching gears. Get a Barton shifter, do a tune. I would definitely get a Barton shifter, no doubt about it. I love me some Barton shifters, so certainly go that route. And as far as a tune goes, yeah, I would definitely get a tune. But in the meantime, do the clutch line restriction mod. You're going to want to hit that also. I've done a video on it, but I've never done a video showing actually how to do it. There are videos out there that show how to get that that restrictor out of the clutch line. That'll help you out too. But yeah, a tune will help you, but the shifter, just leaving it alone and just putting the shifter in, well worth it in my opinion. Like I say, I love Barton shifters. Let's see. CFL James asking, best advice to run 2019 1320 to the low 11s. Only have done the Hellcat lower box and Fastman ported throttle body. Billet Specialties drag pack wheels, 18.5-inch skidding, 17x10, 305 45s. Let's see. I would say how to get to low 11s. It will already run low 11s. If you've got a rear seat delete car, all you really have to worry about is letting Mother Nature get you to some cooler DAs. I've seen those cars run 1120s like almost right out of the box on a drag pack in cold DA. So you're already kind of there. I would say do the normal mods. You know, pull the driver seat, pull the passenger seat, leave the driver's seat, pull the passenger seat. You know, a little bit of weight reduction goes a long way. A tune, and I mean, if you want to get it tuned, a tune and you're already there. You got to remember, my SRT with just a tune on 20s on drag radials went 1130s, and my car's clone with no passenger seat and on a drag pack went 1120s. So, and those were SRTs. your car would pick up a couple of tenths, at least a full tenth on top of what my car ran. Or I'm sorry, at least 2 tenths over what my car ran, is based on weight. So you're pretty much already there. Just stick with what works and go out there and have some fun. You got to wait a little bit on DA, but aside from that, you're in good shape, man. It's a fun car too. Destroyer 1320 saying, great 1320 suspension, just need a forged lower end and boost. No doubt with that. Yeah, CFL saying no rear seat. You're already there, brother. Well, guys, we are coming up on almost right at 2 hours and 40 minutes, and I got to wake up with the Amish tomorrow morning. So I want to thank all of y'all for hanging out with me. Thanks to everybody who contributed to the cause. I truly appreciate that, guys, more than y'all know. Again, it's very humbling, and I just don't know what to say. I just don't have words for that. So thank y'all so very much. Again, God bless. Y'all have a fantastic rest of the week. Can't wait to see you on the next one. And that is a wrap on this one. Adios.